What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Xehther, and today we will be discussing what would happen if Deku had the 8 inner gates from, you guessed it, the world of Naruto. Now, before I say anything at all, I first need to address one thing: the thumbnail maker of all of these banger videos. Thank God. If you guys have not checked them out already, then please go down below and click his link down below in the description, because this man is an absolute mad lad and he has been working for me tirelessly every single day. So go check him out and show the man some love. That being said, this story has a lot of ups and a lot of downs. So if you guys go on to enjoy this what if, then please make sure to go down below and again, subscribe to Thank God. But yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the what if.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Okay, so where the story is actually all going to start off is the day that Deku was told he's quirkless. Deku would of course be going on his way to the quirk doctor after a while of not actually finding out whether he does or does not have a quirk. Deku would basically just be going to the doctor's office with hopeful eyes, just wishing that please, please, please let me have a quirk. As Deku would of course arrive at the quirk doctor, and the quirk doctor would of course tell him that, yeah, you see this pinky toe joint, you know, all that usual stuff about the pinky toe. Honestly, to me, that seems like a bunch of bogus, and I think that the quirk doctor actually stole his quirk. It's just, you know, a little conspiracy or whatever, but, you know. No, but all seriousness though, Deku would proceed to be told that he's quirkless, and after this, Deku would go back to school, so he would proceed to get bullied by Bakugo, being told that he's useless, and Bakugo would call Midoriya a Deku. He would tell him that, well, he's useless, and that's the name that he gives people who are useless, as Bakugo would spend the next couple of months essentially just calling Deku that, and after a certain day, Deku would just say, "I'm not useless!" Sakura reference. Anyways, but no, but seriously though, Deku would look at Bakugo and say, "I'm not useless. And I can be just as strong as you someday, Bakugo. You'll see." As he would run away, you know, just crying and rubbing his face as he's just trying to get the tears to go away. Deku would get home, and this is when he would tell his mom that he wants to get strong to help him. She would basically look at Deku and she would say that, well, I mean, I guess she could put him into karate, so maybe they could stop bullying him. And Deku would say that, yeah, that'll be cool. Yeah, put me into karate. As Deku would of course be taken to a little karate class, and this is when Deku would attend it for a couple of months. But after, you know, or actually no, sorry, not attend it for a couple of months, but Deku would go there the first day, and after he basically tells the instructor that he's quirkless, the guy there would basically just tell Deku that this is not a smart idea. Since you're quirkless, you can get hurt by kids here who are actually allowed to use their quirks in these karate matches. It's pretty helpful, seeing as, you know, we have to stop pretending that people aren't born with quirks. So my dojo is, well, it's made for people with quirks, so I'm afraid you can't join. As Deku would just be crushed by this realization, he would just think that, well, I guess that's it. But, you know, Deku, before he left, he would just see a couple of things that the students did. They would throw punches and kicks. And after seeing that stuff, Deku would basically get home as he would ask his mom if he could get on the computer. He'd basically get on the computer and he'd look up his little All Might video as always, as he would then proceed to go online and look up how to get strong, as it would immediately show up a bunch of workout routines. Deku would look at each one and he would then proceed to look at it and say, I'm gonna do this, but twice as hard. If I'm gonna catch up to people with quirks, I need to work twice as hard. People like them are gifted with that, but I'm gonna work even harder than them, and someday I'll be even more powerful than all of them. As Deku would proceed to essentially just get up after that, and he would ask his mom if he could basically go to his room now, and, you know, he doesn't want to be here no more. As she would say that of course Deku would go out to eat some dinner, and he would then go inside of his room, as he would proceed to basically say, okay, I'm gonna throw 100 punches, 100 kicks, and I'm gonna try to do a push-up. As Deku of course knows what the push-ups and sit-ups are, seeing as, you know, he's in preschool, but, you know, PE doesn't stop when you're in preschool. So, your boy definitely know what that is. So Deku would proceed to say, I'm going to throw 100 punches, as he would begin to throw 100 punches with each arm. And he would then kick 100 times, as Deku would then proceed to do that every day for about a month, until Deku finally decided that he's going to ramp up the training to 300 punches and 300 kicks. And if he cannot do that, then it's 200 sit-ups. No, I'm just kidding. He's a little kid. But seriously though, if he cannot do that, then it's 20 sit-ups or 40. Yeah, 40 sit-ups, as Deku would continue just doing this for the next couple of days. He would proceed to basically try to do this training regimen that he had basically created for himself, and he would just keep training for the next couple of years. He would do Rock Lee's training. Every day he would run on the track of their school, stay after school, throw a bunch of punches and kicks, and he would even ask his dad, Hisashi, to take him to the gym with him anytime that he can and show him how to, do some basic exercises. As Hisashi would of course do that, he has a fire quirk, so I believe, he's obviously not going to be weak if you got a fire quirk. He's a fire breather, come on now. Natsu, come on. You gotta be powerful. But no, all jokes aside though, through the years, Deku would just continue doing this type of training. Every day you would see Deku sweating profusely, as he would be throwing 1,000 punches, 1,000 kicks, 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000 lunges, squats, everything. And Deku would just continue doing this, keeping this cycle for, well, as long as he can physically keep it up. He would train every day nonstop, and he would eat meals that would help him out with, his training regimen. And this is when Deku would actually decide that he's going to get into some boxing classes. He would make sure that this time, they're not made for only people with quirks. So years would pass by, and at this point, Deku would be 10 years old as he would enter a boxing gym. He would go in there to work out, and as soon as he enters, he would proceed to get dominated by the kids who have been there for years. But for the people who have only been there for a couple months, Deku would do a great job. And he would actually be able to catch one of the kids who was actually training for years, actually, at this point, one good solid punch, which would have actually led that kid to drop down to the ground. But if it wasn't for the fact that Deku, threw his guard down, he probably would have won that battle. So the gym instructor saw a lot of potential in him, regardless of him being quirkless. So yeah, Deku would proceed to train with him for a couple of days, or no, for the next couple of months, and Deku would just keep up with his training regimen. He would proceed to just keep doing boxing, and he would try to get back into that karate dojo, where he would meet a certain somebody. This certain somebody would of course be Tail Boy, or Ojiro, as he would meet him, and he's one of the people who actually attends the karate dojo. Deku would go inside and he would meet Tail Boy, and this is when Deku would proceed to essentially go up to him, and he would actually have to fight him in order to get into the karate place, seeing as, well, if you want to get in here, you're gonna have to beat my best student. So Deku would do it, and of course he would be able to defeat Ojiro with ease. As Deku would go on in there, he would take down the top student, and after this, Deku would be allowed to go in there. As he would spend about a year in there in that class, and he would actually end up mastering all of the skills, as he would end up leaving, and by this point, Deku would be 10 years old. He would continue to do the Rock Lee type training, and Deku would just keep continuously getting stronger and stronger. At this point, Deku would be 10 years old, and he'd be about half as strong as Weightless Lee. As it's at this point that Deku finally implements the weighted training. He would get weighted clothes, and he would buy himself some little wristbands or whatever, the things that Deku has in his hands in the thumbnail. Pretty much he gets some of those, but kind of the way that Rock Lee has them, the bandages, right? Put bandages on his knuckles and just punch the wall 1,000 times. It would get to the point where he was actually able to smash trees. With one kick he could drop a whole big tree. Like, now I'm not talking these little oak trees, I'm talking about giant old, like, big old trees. Like these trees are no joke. Like, I mean, it's a tree, but they probably are a joke, but you get what I mean. What I mean essentially is that Deku's pretty strong. He can kick a whole tree down. That takes a lot of strength. So yeah, Deku obviously pretty powerful. So yeah, that being said, Deku would proceed to keep up with this training for 2 more years, as at this point Deku would be 14 years old. And this is when Deku would basically wonder how he can get any stronger, since at this point he basically hit a slope, and he was wondering if maybe by now he finally caught up to Bakugo, the thing that he was always aspiring to reach. Deku would walk into the cafeteria as Bakugo would basically walk by Deku, and he would basically like give him a snarl, as he would say. And he would then walk by him as he bumps Deku's shoulder and feels that his body feels strong. He's really covered up since the uniform that they have to wear covers up most of the physical body that they have. I mean, look at Bakugo. He's ripped, but in his little school uniform, he really didn't look that strong. So yeah, Deku would have a similar effect, but he'd look a little bigger than Bakugo. And Deku would be extremely lean and ripped. He'd be abnormally ripped. He'd be literally looking like the Deku in the thumbnail, just a little bit less mass. And yeah, Deku would be looking fire. So yeah. Deku would basically proceed to essentially just ask Bakugo what that was for. And Bakugo would turn around with his explosion quirk as he would say, "What? You want to do about it, you quirkless Izuku? You quirkless Deku, sorry." As, you know, Deku would basically look at him and say, "Yeah, I do want to do something about it. How about we have a little bit of a training session, Bakugo? Let's see if you can still treat me like your little punching bag." As Bakugo would smile and say, "Looks like you finally grew a pair. When and where, I'll be there." As Deku would say, "How about we go to that abandoned junkyard? It's about a mile away." As Bakugo would say, "Sure thing. Make sure you don't wuss out." As Deku would say, "I wouldn't dream of it." He would then proceed to look at Bakugo, and Bakugo would give him a little smirk, and he would then blast explosions in his hand as he would clap his hands and say, "You're dead." As he would proceed to basically go through with the rest of the day of school, Deku would be calming himself down and, you know, trying to calm down his nerves. As he's nervous. I mean, he's always looked up to Bakugo regardless of, you know, where he was at. And he saw Bakugo as a genius. To him, Bakugo was the goal that he has to achieve. So yeah, Deku would basically proceed to go over to where Bakugo's at. And at this point, Deku is 14 years of age. And he's about 75% as strong as the Lee was that we got in the tuning exams. He'd be pretty powerful at this point in his own right, but, you know, tuning exam Rock Lee is absolutely insane. So I can't get him quite there just yet. And yes, boys, I know some of you guys may be like, "Yo, dude, stop weakening this man Deku." Listen, I'm doing it for the story. Like trust me, it's worth it in the end once you see where I'm going with this. But yeah, Deku would proceed to basically meet Bakugo at the abandoned warehouse. And this is when Bakugo would say, "So you ready, Deku?" As he'd actually be alone. He wouldn't have even brought his friends. And Deku would look at Bakugo as he would say, "Of course I am." As he'd basically get into his fighting position and throw off his shirt. As Deku would be wearing nothing but some black pants and the wrist and the bandages on his hands. As Deku would immediately, before Bakugo can even react, Deku would just blitz him and kick him right on the side of the head, sending him flying in the way that Rock Lee had done to Sasuke. Bakugo would then get up really startled, and Deku would be right in front of him as he kicks him up into the air in a sort of, you know, the Hidden Lotus. He'd proceed to basically scream, "Hidden Lotus!" as he would jump into the air, and he'd then grab Bakugo with his bandages as he wraps him up and then proceeds to go down as he slams Bakugo down onto the concrete. And Bakugo is just completely knocked out. Blood is coming off of his head as Deku then proceeds to see Bakugo like that, and he would then just run away from the area. As Bakugo would wake up a few hours later, he would then wonder what happened, as he would then get a flashback to Deku just knocking this man straight on his ASS. This man completely ate SHIT. I don't know if I can even say that without, you know, losing my my Mooney that I'm gonna make from this video, because YouTube do be liking to do that though. But no, seriously though, he basically realized how far he's come after landing that kick on his way home. He'd be running, and he would decide that maybe he's even stronger than what he thought. As that same night, Deku would decide that that battle didn't really give him any experience that he wanted. So Deku would decide that maybe it's time to try to do a little bit of vigilanteism. As Deku would proceed to basically smile, thinking that yes, this is going to be amazing. And Deku for the next couple of months would basically go out at night with a black hoodie, some black pants, and, you know, some black Air Forces, because he's dangerous. And he would also wear a mask, a hockey mask. as he would run out and he would basically use nothing but his hand-to-hand combat to take out a bunch of villains. This would basically be going on for about 7 months at this point, and Deku would have been taking down villains after villain after villain. Deku would be very smart with what he does, and Deku would not leave any traces for anybody to find him. He would take down villains, petty thieves, very basic small shots for a while. And on the rare occasion, he would run into some gangs who had really powerful quirks, but in terms of Deku's speed and strength overall, he would definitely be able to take them all out. But it's on one particular day that Deku's actually trying to basically walk by some store right after he basically got out of school. He'd be wearing a school uniform. He would then see a guy with some orange hair who looks very powerful, actually, as Deku would see that this guy basically just mugged the store owner. And right after seeing that, Deku would basically run out of there. As he'd go into an abandoned alleyway, he would then proceed to throw on a hoodie, the mask, and he would then just basically proceed to run after the guy. It would be about 6 at this point, and Deku would have actually ended up losing him. He didn't know at all where he was, and a hero would have actually spotted Deku. As he saw what was going on, he would go up to Deku and ask him what he's doing. Deku would basically say that he's playing Jason Voorhees with his friends, the Jason guy, the guy from the movie. As he would look at Deku and he'd basically say, all right, kid, go on home. There's been a vigilante wearing an outfit similar to that. You don't want to be caught in that, or else you might get wrongly accused. As Deku would give him a genuine smile and say thank you so much, as he'd basically proceed to go away. And this is when Deku that same night would go out with a different mask this time. He'd be wearing like a monkey mask, like the one in GTA. Yeah, that one right there. I'm pretty sure I'm actually going to have it in the gameplay. So if you guys just look at the gameplay, for the video, you guys should be able to see the GTA, the stuff. But yeah, that being said though, Deku would be wearing that as he would go out, and he would then proceed to basically just be walking around, wandering the areas. As he'd be walking near a bank, and this is when Deku would basically just be rooftop to rooftop, just jumping around with one arm, doing training as he's also looking for villains. He would see the same guy that he saw a couple of days, that same day, and he would then see that the guy was actually was putting something on the doors of the bank. As immediately the door would just explode, and the man would then run in there with about 3 other guys. As they would run into the bank, they would then start grabbing all of the money. As Deku, as soon as he sees that, he would run at top speeds over there, basically body flickering there. As he would then say, hey, put that down. And Wolfram, yes, Wolfram, the villain from the first My Hero Academia movie, would turn around as he aims his attention to Deku and blasts him with a piece of metal that would actually go deep into Deku's leg. He was caught off guard. Deku would then be punched by one of his teammates who actually had the knife quirk, and Deku would then fall into the ground as he would get a couple of scratches. And that is actually where he would get the scar that is in the thumbnail. If you guys can see all those little scars that Deku has on his chest and forearm, stuff like that, yeah, that's from this battle. As a guy would cut him, Deku would start bleeding out a little bit, but Deku would then jump back into battle as he would decide that he's not going to be taken out this easily. This isn't how it ends. As he would then say that this is gonna end before it can even start. As immediately Deku would rip out the piece of metal that was jabbed into his leg. He would then proceed to blitz towards the guy with the weird razor sharp arms quirk, and he would then knock him out with a swift kick to the back of the head. He would then turn around as he flips over the other guy and says, "Leave Hurricane!" As he would then send the guy crashing straight through the wall. This is when heroes would start getting alerted, and Deku would realize that he needs to make this quick. As Wolfram would shoot his metal pieces right at Deku, Deku would jump over, barely missing it, and he would then run after his other teammate, the last one that is. He would then grab him and shove him right into his knee. He would literally grab him by the head and just BAM! Smash him with his knee in the head. As he would then rush towards Wolfram, and he would begin to use his metal manipulation to basically push the metal right at Deku, and this would actually constrict Deku's movements. He wouldn't be able to move, and this is when Deku would basically have Wolfram walk up to him as he would say, "You almost stopped me, kid, but you were too little too late." As this is when he would then proceed to create a giant piece of metal. As it would lunge straight at Deku, the piece would come in and it would be right about to smash Deku. As immediately Deku would just think that it's not over. It's not over. As he would immediately proceed to basically activate the first gate, as Deku's arm would wiggle a little bit and he would break his arm free. As he would punch the metal piece right away from him, he would then break himself out of there and he would blitz right at Wolfram as he sends him hurling with the Leaf Hurricane right at the wall. And right as he does that, Wolfram would fly into the air. Deku would say, "Hidden Lotus!" He would grab him in the air and he would slam him right into the concrete as he is down for the count. Deku, after looking at his injuries, would decide that he needs some attention right now, as Deku would immediately rush back home and he would then grab his first aid kit as he begins to treat himself, since he had basically looked up how to do this. Since this wasn't his first rodeo, Deku definitely knew how to treat his wounds that he had, because, you know, as I said, this isn't the first time that Deku had tried it. So yeah, Deku would go home and he would actually not come out for the next 2 weeks or so, since it took a while to heal those injuries. Deku would then get up after all that time and he would then proceed to start his training once again. During that time, he couldn't really use his leg. He would have done mostly exercising on his arm with bandages on his leg to stop the bleeding, of course. Now, Deku, after realizing that like he got like a major boost, he would wonder if maybe he's some sort of late bloomer, as he would try to go to the quirk office again and they would again tell Deku that he is quirkless. So he would begin to scour the internet for anything that he can find related to what had happened. Maybe it was just an adrenaline rush, but he feels like it was something more. So Deku would proceed to basically try looking up anything and everything that he basically can to see what's going on. He doesn't understand what happened, but it's so mesmerizing. Like he did something that he never thought his body could do. He would then come across a website, a strange, weird one at that, and he would then read what it says. 8 inner gates. Deku would click on the website as he would then begin to read up on the 8 inner gates. And if you guys don't know what the 8 gates are, it's basically something from Naruto that are basically gates that all the characters have within them. And also, in case you guys are wondering, yes, Deku does have chakra. He's just like Rock Lee though, and he doesn't know how to use it. So yeah, he's not going to be using that chakra anytime soon. So yeah, Deku would proceed to basically read up on the 8 inner gates and he would understand what he had done. The gates all consist of, well, 8 gates. The first one being the gate of opening. It basically is located in the brain, and essentially what it does is it can basically make you use 100% of your muscles and your strength, whereas, you know, normally people can only use 20%. The gate of healing, it basically increases the strength. The gate of life, the gate of pain, the gate of limit, the gate of view, the gate of wonder, and the gate of death. After reading up on the gate of death, Deku would realize that that's something he definitely does not want to do, because yeah, I could definitely from what he can see here, it says do not use under any circumstances. So Deku would definitely take that warning to heart. And yeah, Deku would then proceed to essentially I said essentially way too much, but no, seriously, Deku would just proceed to basically after reading up on that, he would save the website and continue to do more research on the 8 inner gates. He would find out what they are and he would start training to try to unlock these. As it'd be about 3 months, and at this point Deku would be 15 years old, as this is the day of the sludge villain. Deku would walk into class, as right before he can, Bakugo and his goons would surround him. And Bakugo would look at Deku as he would say, "Hey, I want my rematch." Deku would look at Bakugo as he would say, "Well, I'm kind of busy after school today, Bakugo. Can we maybe do that tomorrow?" As Bakugo would say, "There's no way you're gonna tell me when and where I can't do something. We're doing this tonight." As after that loss to Deku, Bakugo has definitely been training harder than ever before. He was doing the same thing as Deku, basically working himself to the breaking point, since he knew that Deku was far superior to him. He had done stuff similar to Sasuke, and at this point Bakugo was extremely powerful, or not stronger than Deku by any means, but he was definitely stronger than, you know, what he was before. At this point, Deku has full mastery over the first gate, the gate of opening though, and Deku would definitely be using that later on. So yeah, the teacher would walk into class, tell everybody that he knows they all want to become heroes, and this is when he would basically let them all go home, as Deku would basically run away from that area where Bakugo was supposed to meet him, and he'd basically walk under the tunnel, as this is when the sludge villain would basically jump up at Deku, but this version of Deku would barely be able to avoid it, as he would say, "Ah!" He would jump away from it, as he would say, "Give me your body, kid," and Deku would look at the sludge villain as he would say, "Never! Get away from me, you weirdo!" As the sludge villain would try to come at Deku, Deku would say, "Leave Hurricane!" As he would shoot a giant gust of wind that would basically send the sludge villain flying, and he would basically disperse it into different pieces along the way. As Deku would immediately just basically jump away and say that, "You had enough?" As the sludge villain would get up and say, "Yeah!" Deku would then say, "Gate! First gate! Open!" As he would look towards the sludge villain and say, "Leave Hurricane!" He would proceed to basically kick at the sludge villain, as the sludge villain would proceed to disperse everywhere. Deku would then pick it up with the bottle, and this is when All Might would arrive out of nowhere. All Might would arrive and see what Deku had done, as he would then thank him, and Deku would fanboy, of course, getting All Might's autograph, and All Might would leave without Deku asking him if he can become a hero, seeing as Deku doesn't need the acknowledgement of All Might to know he can do what he can do. He's gonna prove it to himself. He doesn't need to prove it to anybody else but himself, that somebody just like him can be a hero, and he's been doing vigilante work, so he knows he can do it. So yeah, Deku would proceed to essentially just be walking home. As on the way home, Bakugo and his goons would have caught up to Deku, and they would tell Deku that they're going to fight now. As both of his goons would rush at Deku, Deku would immediately look at them as he immediately blitzes them both and just knocks them out. They are out cold. And after that, Bakugo would blitz at Deku as he uses his explosion quirk to blast at the floor. He jumps into the air as he says, "AP shot!" As he would shoot a bunch of shots at Deku, Deku would basically proceed to spin in the air as he would jump into the air, and he would say, "Gate of opening," as he would immediately rush at Bakugo, as Bakugo and Deku would basically go at it. Bakugo would be able to dodge about the first 5 hits, but Deku would land another 20 on Bakugo. But Bakugo's resistance definitely went up since he had his goons trained with him, and he had them mercilessly beat this man since he wanted to go, build up his resistance to damage. So yeah, Bakugo's resistance to hits is much higher than our original counterpart of Bakugo. And don't worry, boys, Bakugo's really not that powerful in terms of the grand scheme of things. He's about as strong as a season 3 Bakugo, but just pretty durable and physically stronger. It's really not that much of a difference, honestly, but yeah, he's aight. He's aight, He's at around current anime point Bakugo. Yeah, current anime point Bakugo. The one that, saved all the wallets and all that stuff. Yeah, so Bakugo is pretty powerful. So yeah, Bakugo would basically blitz towards Deku. And this is when Deku would immediately kick Bakugo away from him, as he would proceed to take his leg weights off. As after that, the leg weights would drop onto the ground, cracking the concrete. And after seeing that, Bakugo would be caught off guard so hard that Deku would have a perfect opening to blitz right at this man and send this man crashing to the ground, as he would proceed to eat, what the word is, eat shit. Yeah, he would eat that, as Bakugo would get knocked out instantly. And Deku would run off home, as this is when Deku would begin the 10 months of training. Okay, so this story starts off right after Deku had won in the fight against Bakugo and had basically started running home. After that, Deku basically proceeded to get home and eat some dinner with his mom, as he then lay down in bed and he got ready to start the very next day, because tomorrow he was going to train like never before. The very next day, Deku would immediately start making his training even more intense than before. And this version of Deku's 10 months of training wouldn't actually be with All Might at Dagoma Beach, because, well, All Might isn't there to give him one for all. So yeah, Deku would proceed to essentially just go to Dagoma Beach all by himself on his own free accord, and he would begin to essentially start moving out the trash. As his goal, he set it for himself that he was going to clean this beach in 2 weeks, and if he cannot clean this beach in 2 weeks, then he's going to run around the whole city in under 10 minutes. And if he cannot do that, then yeah, you guys get the point. Deku was giving himself 2 weeks to clean the beach. So Deku better get started. He would go as soon as the break of dawn would start, and in under 2 weeks, Deku would clear out the entirety of Dagoma Beach. As after this, Deku would start doing, his normal training, amping up the antics and using his weighted clothing to train. At this point, this version of Deku doesn't have that weird little green jumpsuit that Rock Lee does, just because I'm not giving it to him. I'm sorry. I love Rock Lee. I love my guy, but that suit, man, it's a recipe for disaster. I don't want to do this boy Deku dirty like that, so I'm not going to give him that because I'm just not that mean. Like, don't get me wrong. This version of Deku is strong, but I don't know if it's strong enough to keep him away from all the roast that he would get if I, added all that. But no, seriously though. Deku would then proceed to essentially just continue doing training just like usual. He would continue doing the same things that he's always done, just amping up the antics even more. And at this point, let's say it had been about the 2-month mark where Deku was training like crazy, working to unlock even more of the gates. At this point, Deku had a complete mastery over the opening the first and second gate all by himself. The second gate would still give him a lot of strain, and it would actually be a lot harder for him to access the third gate. At one point, he saw a slight glimpse of it, but it just wasn't enough. His body just wasn't strong enough. He would continue with the training until at about 2.5 weeks in, All Might and some other kid would come to Dagoma Beach, as Deku would basically see that All Might had just landed with some other kid, and they both got there as they're training on the wide open beach. As Deku would arrive there, right after they got there, Deku would basically get there and he would proceed to look at All Might as he asks, "Hey All Might, what are you doing here?" As All Might would look at Deku, he would then look back at Mirio and say, "Ah, yes, young man, I remember. I saw you the other day at the sludge villain incident." To which Deku would look at All Might and say, "You were there? Why didn't you step in?" All Might immediately would say, "Because I saw you on the news." And Deku would then say, "Huh. Okay, that makes a lot more sense, I guess." But he would just be thinking about that, like, if he saw me on the news, why didn't he step in? That kid, like, Bakugo could have been in serious danger. And after that, All Might would basically just try playing it off, as Deku would proceed to just say, "Alright." And after this, Deku would essentially just proceed to go on home. As Deku would pretty much proceed to essentially, after seeing All Might there, wait, no, he would not go home. I am so sorry for saying that, but he would not go home. Deku would essentially proceed to not understand me, not go home, and he would essentially walk up to All Might as he asks, Mirio and All Might what they're doing there. As All Might says that they're here to train because he is going to be training this young man there. As Mirio would walk up to Deku, he'd begin to basically shake Deku's hand and say, "Hey, what's up? Name's Mirio." As Deku would say, "Name's Midoriya." And Mirio would look at Deku as he would proceed to say, "Huh, it's a pretty cool name." As Deku would basically look at Mirio and he would proceed to say, "So what's your quirk?" As Mirio would explain to Deku that his quirk is permeation, but it also gives him super strength. And Deku would basically think about that and say, "But that doesn't correlate at all. How does that make any sense?" And this is when Alma would basically step in the way, as he would say, yeah. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but I mean, it's just the quirk that he was born with. Quirks sometimes don't make sense." As he would start to awkwardly laugh it off, and this is when Deku would start being a little weirded out by that. As Deku would essentially proceed to look at All Might, and he would just not say anything. He wouldn't say a single word. He would look away from him, and this is when he would look towards Mirio, as he would ask Mirio if he's powerful. I mean, if you're training with All Might, you better be, right? As Mirio would chuckle and say he is, as he would point his thumbs up, and Deku would then look at Mirio as he would say, "Perfect. I've been looking for a sparring partner. You think you want to spar with me, maybe?" As Mirio would, at this point, he still hasn't been given one for all, so he still doesn't have the super strength, but he's just saying that because All Might told him to. He's, telling people that that's quirk, that's something new he got, right? But anyways, Deku would essentially proceed to get into his fighting stance against Mirio, as All Might would then basically say, "You kids and your energy," as he would proceed to basically say, "Go!" And this is when Deku would immediately, before Mirio even gets the chance to permeate, Deku would be right behind him as he would send Mirio crashing into the sand. Mirio would permeate into the ground as Deku had jumped over there and was ready to land a deadly kick to the back of the head to end the match, but Mirio would permeate straight into the ground, and Deku would then basically realize that that's what permeation means. He would proceed to basically look for Mirio, and this is when Mirio would come in out of nowhere. He says, "Power!" And he punches Deku straight in the jaw, sending him crashing away. This is when Deku would proceed to basically say, "You're pretty strong," as he would rush back and he would start using his top speed, weighted that is, as he'd be wearing nothing but jeans and, the thing that he's wearing in the thumbnail. He'd pretty much just be wearing that again. As this version, this time Deku's wearing a shirt. This time he'd be wearing a white shirt. And he would rush back at Mirio. As Mirio's basically looking at Deku, he would proceed to permeate straight through the punch, and Deku, when he's not looking, would get kicked from behind by Mirio. As after this, Mirio would throw a devastating punch to Deku's gut, which Deku would harden his stomach, and Mirio would punch this man in his hardest steel abs as he would hurt his hand actually. And in that split second of distraction, Deku would proceed to kick Mirio up into the air as he's preparing to use the hidden lotus. He would kick Mirio up as Mirio would lose all sense of direction. For a second, everything went hazy and he wasn't able to see anything straight, as Deku would grab onto Mirio with his cloth, with his bandages, and he would proceed to start spinning in the air as Mirio would permeate right at the point of impact, as Mirio would permeate straight into the ground and come back up. But before Mirio even got the chance to come back up, Deku would drop the weights as they would crash in the floor and the sand would start, rising. As instantly as soon as that happened, Deku would say, "Gate of opening," as he would blitz Mirio before Mirio could even react. And he would use the same attack Mirio had used on him, going in for poking Mirio's eyes, and Mirio would immediately close them as Deku would send him with the uppercut straight in the jaw, kick himself up into the air, and he'd proceed to do some Liu Kang type kicks as he would kick him, do with the bicycle kick in the air, and just begin to obliterate this man Mirio. Mirio, on the other hand, would drop onto the floor and cough out some blood, as All Might would say, "And the winner is Deku," as he would look at Deku's direction and say that this kid is impressive. He would then look at Deku and ask him what his quirk is, as Deku would look at All Might and say he's actually quirkless. All Might would look straight at Deku and just be completely shocked at that revelation. Quirkless? Him? Well, how was he able to do what he had done before where, Okay, I needed to stop the recording real quick. I just realized Deku never had the sludge villain incident happen because All Might jumped away. So in case some of you guys are down below commenting like, "Yo, dude, what do you mean a sludge villain incident? It never ended up happening." Well, I'm going to be retconning a couple things. Number one, Deku got home and he ended up fighting against Bakugo, of course, after all that stuff. And the very next day, he went to the beach, he trained a little bit, and All Might stuff with him basically being like, "Yo, what's going on?" That basically changes. But other than that, those are the only real things that are going to be changing. Anyways, moving on with the story. After this, All Might would basically look at Deku as he's just totally lost for words. He would ask Deku how he was able to access that much more power than he normally has, as Deku would explain to All Might that it's something called the gates, the 8 gates, as All Might would say, "So that's your quirk, right, kid?" And Deku would look at All Might as he would say, "No, All Might, I'm serious. I'm really quirkless." As All Might would look at Deku and he would be just shocked. He'd be like, "There's no way this kid's actually quirkless. You're messing with me, right?" As Deku would look at All Might and he would say, "Not at all, All Might. I would never dream of doing that to you." As All Might would basically look at Deku, Deku would look back at him as he would begin to explain to him that inside of everybody there's life energy, and that life energy can be converted into power. There's essentially 8 gates that basically prohibit you from using your full capabilities. The gate of opening, the gate of, whatever. I forgot the names of the gates. It's been a minute and I haven't looked at that little sheet thing. Wait, I have it written down. So if anything, I could read it, but I don't really think you guys care too much about hearing what the gates are. So yeah, with that being said, Deku would basically proceed to, essentially just carry on with what he was doing, as All Might would just be in total shock still, and he just can't fathom the fact that Deku's quirkless. His body, his aura, it just seems too powerful to be quirkless, as All Might would ask Deku if he's willing to have a sparring session with him, As this is when Deku would look at All Might and say, "You're serious? You want to spar with me?" Deku would get so excited as he would then say, "Yes, this is all I wanted. I can't wait. I'm finally going to get an opponent who's worthy enough." And Mirio would look at Deku as he would say, "But what about?" As Deku would look at Mirio and say, "Oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean that you weren't worthy. It's just, All Might is All Might, And Mirio would then look at Deku as he would say, yeah, All Might, right. As Deku would then proceed to look at Mirio as he would then say, maybe we can train a little more after we can both, after like the end of the 10 months, maybe we can do more sparrings during these months. And I mean, it looks like a good idea to start training with you guys instead of just on my own. As Mirio would smile at that and he would then say, definitely. Deku would then proceed to look at Mirio as he would smile as well. And he would then get into a fighting stance with All Might. All Might would basically decide that he's only going to use about 50% of his power, seeing as he doesn't want to mess up this kid Deku too bad. So as soon as the battle would start, All Might would blitz at Deku, who has no weights on, and Deku would barely be able to get out of the way, as All Might would proceed to essentially throw punches and kicks straight at Deku's direction, to which Deku would basically dodge straight out of the way, and he would start ending up basically just chipping down at All Might's health and stamina. He would start slowly just punching him from each and every direction, and this one All Might would cover his face and put his guard up essentially. As Deku, if you guys look at the one that's in the thumbnail, or wait, you can't, there's gameplay, but Deku would basically pose in the way that he is in the thumbnail, and he would blitz in front of All Might as he would throw the punch, which would literally dislocate All Might's jaw. All Might would be flung, and I mean flung, to the other side of the beach, as immediately Deku would say, "Second gate, open!" And at this point, All Might would literally crack his jaw back into place, and he would blitz over to Deku as they would both reel their arms back and go in for a strong punch, to which Deku and All Might would start clashing. They would both start going blow for blow immediately, as they are both landing attacks that are absolutely incredible. Mirio would be staring in absolute shock at what this kid is able to do, quirkless at that, as Deku would basically look at Mirio and say that it doesn't matter if he's quirkless, he's still going to become a hero, as he would throw a punch right at All Might. All Might would be sent flying, and this one All Might would decide that he needs to crank it up, as he would begin to use 70% of his power. He would blitz behind Deku and just start dominating this man. He would start ragdolling Deku. He'd pick him up by his skull and slam him onto his knees. He would grab him by the arm and smash him into the sand, which would cause Deku to cough out some blood, and Deku would be forced to jump out of the way, barely dodging All Might's Texas Smash, as Deku would get behind him and kick All Might in the leg, trying to drop him, but All Might would power up to 100 and immediately send Deku flying with a punch that would send him right back to where they started the battle, as Deku would get like angry, as he would blitz back at All Might and say, "Third gate, open!" He would scream to the heavens as he says that, and Deku would activate the third gate for a brief moment. As All Might would be coming in for the finishing blow, Deku would step on the literal air and blitz behind All Might, as he kicks All Might on the side of the gut on his injury, to which leads All Might to cough out so much blood, and he would then basically crash into the sand, as All Might would be out completely. After he gets knocked out, All Might would revert back to his Small Might form, and this is when Mirio would look at Deku as he would say, "We have to get him to the hospital now," as Deku would say he's so sorry and that he didn't mean to hurt him that bad, and Mirio would just say that it's okay, not to worry about it. All Might knew what he was getting into when he fought you, as Deku would say he knows that's true, but he still feels sorry. Mirio would say not to worry about it and that Recovery Girl should be able to heal him. He would be rushed to Recovery Girl and she would do her thing, she would heal All Might, and afterwards All Might would just be terrified of this kid. Third gate open, and he was able to literally catch All Might slacking. Third gate, and yes boys, I definitely believe that a third gate Rock Lee could definitely topple over some All Might. All Might is way more powerful than Deku if we're talking raw physical tank strength. But I'm saying that once Deku gets to like 7th gate, he'll be far surpassing All Might. But at this point, All Might is definitely stronger, but Deku just has better fighting techniques, and he's just a better fighter overall. He's been doing this for years, and he studied different, forms of martial arts: boxing, karate, taekwondo, taijutsu. Yeah, he was studying a lot of stuff, and his fighting style would be very reminiscent to Rock Lee's. It's kind of like he was Rock Lee's reincarnation, which is pretty much kind of what he is, just not really, since his eyebrows aren't that bushy. His eyebrows are kind of bushy if you look at the one in the thumbnail, but it's aight. But yeah, Deku would essentially proceed to help All Might get back up, and after a week of All Might healing, he would arrive at Dagoma Beach to see Mirio and Deku sparring once again. All Might would get some flashbacks to what had happened, and this is when All Might would decide that, yeah, they're going to need to do a lot of strength training for both of them, seeing as they both need to get even more ripped than they are now. So for the next 8 months, Deku and Mirio would do sparring sessions every day, and Mirio would be granted One for All, with Deku being informed of what One for All is after All Might told him everything about, what happened with the Small Might form. Deku would know all about it, and All Might would have actually asked Deku if he wanted it instead. Mirio also would have asked Deku, why doesn't he take One for All? I mean, Mirio already has a quirk, but if Deku was to have that ability, he would be unstoppable. He may even be more powerful than All Might, as, Deku would have really thought about it, but at the end of the day, he would have said that he would just feel horrible if he was to take away something that was meant for Mirio, as well as, not go through with being a quirkless hero. That's his goal. He wants to be the first ever quirkless hero, and well, he's not gonna go away from that just because there's a quirk in front of him. It's so tempting, and even though he loves All Might and he's his idol, he just can't do it. He wants to become a hero on his own power. No quirks, nothing. He wants to prove to the world that quirkless people can be strong too. You can be strong too, by the way. I'm talking to you guys, my fans. I love y'all. Anyways, that's enough of that love. But no, Deku would basically proceed to keep training for the 8 months, and 10 months would go by as Deku at this point has a full access to the 4th gate. The gate of yeah, I have no idea what the 4th gate is called. I think it's called the Gate of Pain. Yeah, I looked it up. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I looked it up. It's the Gate of Pain, right? Deku would basically be able to unlock the Gate of Pain at this point. And the man is broken, to put it lightly. This man is absolutely goated at this point. So yeah, by the end of the 10 months, Deku's basically looking like the one in the thumbnail. Muscle mass the exact same, and his taijutsu prowess just went through the roof. He was training with somebody who was even more who was training with All Might, for God's sake. And Mirio, come on, who has One for All and at this point can use 40%. Deku can use the 4th gate, Mirio can use 40%, and they're going to be literally like best friends. This is going to be some of that homie love. You feel that vibe? But anyways, no, seriously though. But Deku would basically, after the last day of training, Deku would thank All Might and Mirio for all their help, telling them that if it wasn't for them, he wouldn't have gotten this far during these 10 months. As they would of course say, we're welcome, and Deku would have actually put Mirio onto his training routine, which actually Mirio couldn't even keep up with for the first 6 months. So it took him a while to get used to it, but he was able to do like the medium version of the training by the end of the 10 months. So yeah, Mirio's getting powerful as well. I know this isn't called What If Deku and Mirio Were Best Friends, but it might as well be. But anyways, Deku would basically just be getting ready to go to the quirk exam, or no, the UA exam, as he'd basically walk in there and there wouldn't actually be no situation where he meets Uraraka. Instead, when he's walking by, he would actually see a girl with some blonde hair. As Deku would see her, and she would be quite beautiful, but Deku doesn't have time to be, looking at girls. Right now, he has to be focused on the goal at hand, which is, of course, grinding hard and getting strong. Come on now, Deku got to do all that stuff. But yeah, Deku would basically not really pay too much attention to that, and he'd go back to focusing on his exam, to which Deku would get the same scores in canon, seeing as Deku's not dumb by any chance. He's smart, and powerful. Those are two things that any great hero needs. So yeah, Deku would ace the exam, and he actually wouldn't get called out for stuttering, seeing as this version of Deku knows how to talk in his own head, kind of like our likable anime characters, the ones that be having their monologues inside their heads. Yeah, just like that. After this, Deku would basically go outside to the training grounds where they're going to be fighting the robots, and Deku would just start stretching as President Mike would basically go on the speaker and he would say, "There are no countdowns in a real battle. Go, go, go." Deku actually didn't even hear any of that because he was staring at the blonde girl at the front of the gate, and Deku just couldn't keep his eyes off of her. And as soon as he saw everybody run away, he would barely notice what's going on, as immediately Deku would just blitz over there. He'd be wearing 0 weights, keep in mind, and Deku would immediately say, "Open! Gate of opening," as he would immediately blitz towards a bunch of robots and just start destroying them left and right. You would hear, "Leave Hurricane!" and other ones of Rock Lee's attacks. I honestly don't know what his name for his attacks are called, but you would hear a lot of Leaf Hurricane getting yelled in the background in terms of how Deku's doing. With the first gate of opening, Deku would end up destroying a good solid 35 robots, and Deku would decide that that's not enough. He needs to go further, show that somebody quirkless can do it, as he would then say, "Open! Gate of Healing!" as he would immediately start blitzing the robots faster. He would start destroying them at a faster rate, getting 80 robot points respectively. And this is when Deku would decide that it's not enough, as he would say, "Open! Gate of Life!" as he would blitz at the robots, and at this point he would destroy 300 of them. As Deku would then say, "Open! Gate of Pain!" as he would immediately blitz at the robots. And it's at this point that Deku, for like 5 minutes, would just go on a rampage, just completely bloodlusted for these robots, as he would get a total of 500 robot points, crushing All Might's record of 300 something. And yeah, you don't think that's impressive? I don't know what you will, but yeah, Deku would do that quirkless, might I add. And all he has is 8 gates. I mean, it's pretty OP, but he's still quirkless, so yeah. Anyways, Deku after that would essentially proceed to just start sweating as he's just lost for breath. That took a lot out of him. And Deku's skin was pouring out, the red aura that Rock Lee had, but he was able to control it in the way that my guy does. There's, of course, still drawbacks, but they are lessened because Deku is a master of the 4th gate. He can use that perfectly, even better than Rock Lee can, actually. So yeah, Deku can use the 8 gates very, very well. And Deku at this point would basically just be catching his breath for a minute as he would hear the ground rumble. As he does, he would look towards his left side as he would see the girl who was using a bunch of technology to destroy the robots. He thinks that maybe she might be quirkless as well. But yeah, that is the case. And in case you guys are wondering, I'm pretty sure most of you guys already know, this is Melissa. She's, of course, taking a quirk exam because she's not about to take the easy way out. That's not the type of person Melissa Shield is. So yeah, All Might forgot to tell Deku about Melissa, but yeah, she's quirkless too, and she wants to become the first pro quirkless hero as well as Deku. So I'm guessing they're gonna be a good power couple later on. Anyways, that being said, Deku would see as a piece of rubble would drop down, and it would actually almost drop on Melissa, almost crushing her, as immediately Deku would blitz over there, grabbing her in his arms, as Deku would jump up as high as he can to the robot, throw Melissa in the air, and say, "Ah!" as he would throw a punch. It would be more manly than that. I'm kind of copying Rock Lee's instead of what Deku's would sound like. And it'd be more like, "Ah!" as he would throw the punch straight at the 0 pointer, which would just crush in the same way that the original version of Deku had done, the same output of power. As Deku would literally step on the air and grab Melissa, as he would land on the ground, and right as he does, Deku's body would just drop down to the floor as he would be completely unconscious. Deku would basically get picked up by Melissa, and she would proceed to pretty much throw him over her shoulder as she would carry him all the way to Recovery Girl. Now, Deku is literally like 2% body fat, so he's pretty heavy. And Melissa would have been having a pretty tough time trying to, take care of this man Deku. So yeah, she ends up taking him to Recovery Girl, and Deku would wake up a couple minutes later finding out what had happened. As Melissa would be by Deku's bedside, she would basically thank him for what he had done. And this is when Deku would thank her for, saving him as well. She took him to Recovery Girl. As Recovery Girl would walk inside and be like, okay, lovebirds, you guys are free to go. You're woken up, you'll be fine. It's just stamina loss, you just have to rest for a couple of days. As Deku would say, noted, as he would proceed to look at Melissa and ask her if she's doing anything tomorrow. As Melissa would look at Deku and say, no, I'm not. Okay, so where we start our story off this part is right after the date was assembled with Deku and Melissa. Now, it is at this point that Deku basically grabs her number and he goes home. Later on in the day, he basically proceeds to start texting with Melissa back and forth, and they start doing quite a little bit of flirting. Deku starts basically thanking her about saving him, and she says that she couldn't have survived without him. I mean, he's so ripped. How did he get like that? Deku would immediately start blushing a little bit, and they would just continue texting back and forth. The conversation would get a little spicy, I ain't gonna lie. Our boy Deku getting some points in there, I guess you could say. And this is when Deku would proceed to basically ask her when they want to have that date. As Melissa would say that she's not doing anything tomorrow, as she already told him. Deku would say that that's perfect, and he would say that where does she want to go? As Melissa would say that she doesn't really mind, she can go anywhere, honestly. Deku would proceed to look at her and say, what do you want to go out to eat? And she would say, how about Chinese restaurant? Deku would say, oh, sure, I'm down. And they would basically go out the very next day to grab some food. Now, of course, our boy Deku got to get suited up because he's not about to be looking ugly on his date with Melissa. So our boy Deku would, of course, get some drip. Now, I'm just going to say that around this time, it's the weather, it's cool for a hoodie. So Deku would proceed to essentially, this is going to be his drip, right? Check me out. He would proceed to put on a white hoodie, some denim jeans, and some white CDGs with a watch, and a couple bracelets, maybe a necklace here and there. And yeah, it's gonna be the boy's drip for that day. He pretty drippy. And Melissa would of course be getting ready on her own. Melissa would have actually told Deku to be there an hour early before she was gonna be ready, and she actually didn't know that she was going to be quite busy that day. She was busy, so she got caught up, and she's about 20 minutes late on getting ready. So Deku would basically arrive at her house right on time, and as soon as he knocks on the door, Melissa would basically tell Deku to just come inside and have a seat, seeing as she's gonna take about 20 more minutes. She would tell him to just feel at home and to do whatever he wants, and Deku would just be like, sure. As Melissa would basically continue to get ready, Deku would proceed to basically start walking around, and this is when he would notice something that says lab. As Deku would basically yell out to Melissa, he'd say, hey, can I check out the lab? As Melissa would say, what? Sure, go for it. And Deku would immediately just open the door. As he walks inside and sees all of Melissa's creations, he would be immediately impressed, and Deku would say that you made all of this? With Melissa basically saying that she did. It was pretty hard to do, but it's fun. As Deku would immediately just say that she's incredibly intelligent. And Melissa would basically say, yeah, how do you think I was able to get any points in the entrance exam? I use my tech that I make myself. And Deku would be impressed. He would think that, not only is this girl good looking, but she's also very smart. So she's not going to be holding him back in any way, shape, or form. Deku would be pretty happy about this. Melissa ain't dumb, and Deku is quite grateful at that. So with that being said, we're basically just going to cut on over to Deku basically being with Melissa. Now, Deku would basically get in the car and he'd basically drive with Melissa all the way over to, let's see, what am I feeling right now? A Pei-Wei. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's a pretty bomb restaurant. If you guys haven't gone there, you should definitely check it out. It's pretty good. I recommend getting the white rice and orange chicken. It's pretty bomb. It's like a homemade version of Panda Express, so it's very delicious at that. And yeah, it's enough plugging for them. They haven't paid me, I promise. I'm not sponsored. But this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow. Just kidding, I wish. No, but seriously, Deku would proceed to essentially just go on his date with Melissa, and everything would be going dope. They'd be flirting back and forth, and Deku and her would basically just be messing around. When they get to that subject of how it is that Deku got as strong as he got, Deku would proceed to look at Melissa as he would essentially tell her that, well, he's quirkless. He would essentially begin to tell her that he's just basically been training his body all these years, and he seems to have access to something that very limited amount of people actually can access, something called the 8 gates. Melissa would question what this is, and Deku would basically tell her that it's basically unlocking the limiters of their body. And Melissa would say that she's read up on things like that, but she never thought that that was real. Deku would explain that it is, and that only a small amount of people have been able to do it during the course of time, but most of them can only get to the first or second gate, if anything. And Melissa would be pretty intrigued by that. But Deku would proceed to say, but enough about me. I want to learn about how you were able to create all these inventions. And she would begin to basically tell him that she's the daughter of David Shield. To which Deku would be just shocked, and he would say, David Shield, like the famous scientist? She would say, yeah. And Deku would say, no wonder you're so intelligent. You must have gotten it from your dad. She would say, yeah, I pretty much know everything he knows and a little bit more. As Deku would start laughing, and they would both basically just continue to talk about that. As she would ask him how he trains, and he would explain his training regimen, talking about how he uses weighted clothing to get the best benefits. She would begin to think about that and wonder if maybe there's a way that that can be upgraded. Maybe weighted training isn't the best for the results that Deku was looking for. And Deku would ask her, what does she mean? She would say that maybe gravity training would be even more useful than weighted training, because that would make your body get accustomed to different levels of gravity, and that would actually make you even more powerful than what you're currently doing. As Deku would basically not really understand what's going on, but it would then click in his head. He would say, wait, are you thinking what I'm thinking? And she would say, I think I am. As Deku would look at her and ask her if she can make something like that, and she would say, well, it wouldn't hurt to try. As Deku would look at her with excitement in his eyes. His eyes would be burning for the challenge, and he would say, that's perfect. When can you start? As she would say, you know what? I can start right now. As Deku would say, what? And she would say, come with me. I'll show you the lab. As they'd basically go back to Melissa's place, and it's a pretty big place with a giant lab. And she would start basically creating some blueprints for the machine. It would literally be the one that Bulma made for Vegeta. So yeah, she was definitely gonna help the man out with some good old gravity training. Now they would talk about, you know, how the machine's going to work, and Melissa would continue to work on it for about a week. It would take her about 1 week to complete it. During this time though, like about 2 days later, they would have their first day of UA, and this is when Melissa would basically give Deku a call that she's outside. As Deku would say, what? Melissa would say, yeah, I'm here. She would proceed to basically be outside wearing a helmet and like some weird technological wings. As Deku would ask how she made that, she would begin to explain that they're basically like I don't know if you guys have seen Marvel, but the Hawk guy, you know, like the guy, not Hawkeye, but the guy who basically has like the wing things, she basically made something like that. Deku would throw a pair of those on and they would fly to UA, as that was awesome. And yeah, they would arrive there. They would basically sit down, and right when they get to UA, they would see that Bakugo sitting there arguing with one of the students. Deku would look at Bakugo, and he would immediately just face pump, saying that he couldn't have waited even 1 day before he started causing problems, could he? As Bakugo would look towards Deku's direction, he'd be like, huh, looks like they actually let this quirkless loser in. As Deku would look towards Bakugo's direction, he would say, not now, Bakugo. I don't really feel like repeating what I've done to you the past 2 times. Bakugo would say that it doesn't matter because he did that to him 100 times, if not more. And Deku would say, yeah, and how'd that work out? As Bakugo would immediately just kind of grunt his teeth. He would begin to basically get ready to go say something to Deku, but it's at this moment that Aizawa gets up and says, alright, put these on and meet me outside. As everybody would meet Aizawa outside, and I would usually cover the locker room stuff, but I feel like it's kind of just a waste of time, so yeah, I'm not covering that. They'd go inside, and Kirishima of course was, you know, you're ripped, bro. But yeah, Mineta would try to peek. Deku would, you know, hit him and tell him, yeah, not doing that, not happening whatsoever. And yeah, they meet Aizawa outside. That's a pretty much summary of what happened in the locker room. As they would go outside, Aizawa would immediately throw the ball towards Deku's direction and tell him that he was the first one to ever break All Might's record ever since he put it down. Through all of these years, nobody's been able to break it, and he would say that that's pretty impressive, but that doesn't mean anything if he doesn't pass this test. As Deku would catch the ball, Aizawa would tell him to throw it with all his strength, that today they're going to have quirk assessments, and immediately Deku would go on to try to tell Aizawa that he doesn't have a, as Aizawa would basically look at Deku and say, hurry up. Deku would immediately proceed to just reel his arm back and throw it, as Aizawa would basically show that he got about 489 meters. Deku would say that that's all I got? He would say, I can do way better than that. As Aizawa would say, wait, you held back? Deku would say, of course I did. As immediately, Deku would look towards Aizawa's direction and say, fourth gate, open! As he would immediately reel his arm back, and this time he would throw the ball all the way to Hosu City, as he would get thousands upon thousands of meters. As Deku would go on to use the fourth gate to body the rest of the quirk assessment tests, like the race, the grip string test, he would break that. The long jump, he would get a score even better than Bakugo. And he would just proceed to absolutely demolish everything, with Melissa getting a really good score at that, because, well, Melissa knows in this version that she can't just slack off, so she's kind of been doing a little bit of Sonya Blade training. So let's say Melissa's about as strong as Sonya Blade from Mortal Kombat. And yeah, she also has like tech that can shoot out lasers and stuff like that. So yeah, Melissa is kind of like a badass, honestly. So yeah, that being said, they would basically go through with the UA quirk assessment, and at the end of the day, Melissa would get 4th place, Deku would get 1st, Momo 2nd, and whoever got second in the original would get 2nd. Yeah, that's pretty much how these events proceed to play out. And after all of this was basically said and done, they would proceed to basically walk out, as Melissa would turn towards Deku's direction and say that it should be ready by tonight. Deku would say, are you serious? And she would say, of course, as she'd whip out the wings, and right as Deku was about to throw his on, Bakugo would come up from behind him and just shoulder bump him, as he would say, out of my way, nerd. Deku would proceed to look towards Bakugo's direction, as he would be tempted to send this man flying. He would be tempted to make Bakugo touch the earth, but he would look in Melissa's direction and just smile as he says it's nothing, and he would throw on the wings as he would fly away to Melissa's house. This is when they would basically arrive, and Melissa would do a couple of last minute tweaks, as she would look at Deku and say it's ready, and Deku would immediately just be pumped up. As he would jump into the machine, she would immediately just rev the gravity up to 10 times Earth's normal gravity, as Deku would immediately feel the pressure. His body would start crumbling under the pressure of all of this gravity, as Deku would immediately not even be able to move or walk. Deku would be forced to open the first gate, as Deku would barely be able to run at all. Deku would look towards Melissa's direction, as he would say that he's definitely going to have to ease into it. He would say that no, he's not. He's going to go all in, because if there's something he's learned, it's that he has to try even harder than the rest of them. So he would unactivate the first gate, and he would tell her to put on, 10 times normal Earth's gravity, just like she had done before. And Deku would proceed to slowly start throwing punches and kicks. And he would then say, if I cannot throw 100 punches, then it's 200 kicks. And if I cannot do that, he would just say that stuff. He would proceed to go crazy with the workouts, and yeah, he would start getting very, very fast results. By the end of the day, Deku was able to actually handle 10 times normal Earth's gravity, and Deku would actually be on a good start to everything. He would spend the next 3 days before the UA Heroes vs Villains event, and by this point he would actually be able to use 20 times Earth's gravity, and his base strength is going higher and higher. As soon as Deku gets to 30 times Earth's gravity, he'll finally be able to open the 5th gate, and he's gonna be even more broken than before. So yeah, you guys better be ready for all that. So yeah, essentially, he would basically proceed to do the Goku training under the gravity that he's working on, and he would proceed to get even stronger than what he already thought he could reach. Before, his training had started getting stagnant just due to the fact that, well, training started to get a lot easier and he just had to do higher reps and it would take even longer. But now he can go back to what he used to do with low reps and just a lot of pressure. So yeah, Deku was getting much more results than usual and his muscle build was starting to go up gradually as he would start getting even more powerful, and they would now go to school for the day of the Heroes versus Villains event. At this point, Deku and Melissa had gone on a couple dates after Deku had worked out, and she would actually create a couple of pills for Deku to eat after the gravity training to replenish his stamina and health. She would give him all the nutrients that he needs, and Deku would actually, his training would just be going through the roofs. Now, on this particular day, I'm kind of just going to skip to the day of the Heroes versus Villains, and they would potentially just be in class until All Might busts in through the door and says, "I am here," walking in like a normal person, as he proceeds to tell the class to put on the clothes because the clothes make the pros, and to meet him outside that they're going to be having some hero training. With the class basically looking at All Might and freaking out, and Deku just kind of being like around nonchalant about it, with Melissa saying, "Uncle All Might." That definitely would catch Deku off surprise, and she would explain to Deku that, you know, David Shield has a pretty good relationship with All Might, so he's like an uncle to her. And Deku would say, "Oh," and you know, All Might would look at Deku and see that he and Melissa are a little close. He'd proceed to basically say, "So, I see you're took a liking to my niece," as Deku would say that, "Yeah, she's pretty amazing," as All Might would laugh and he would basically hit Deku on his back, just basically shoulder tapping him, I guess you could say, as Deku, he would say, "Get out there, Deku, do your best." Deku would wave, like give him a thumbs up and a smile, and he would go off to get changed. As his hero outfit would be the Anbu outfit, just because, you know, I'm trying to stick to the Naruto stuff and I don't want to give him that ugly Rock Lee outfit. It's not it, bro. I'm not giving him that. Like, if I do that to him, I'm just going to be doing a dishonor to this version of Deku. Like, I can't bring myself to do it. So yeah, Deku would be wearing a very awesome Anbu outfit, and Melissa would actually comment that it looks great on him. Deku looks like a total ninja. He would even have the leaf symbol, what's it called? The leaf symbol, the emblem on his neck. He would be wearing it in the way that, who wears it like that? Oh yeah, Ino. He'd be wearing it in the way, no, Hinata wears it like that too. He'd be wearing it in the way that Hinata wears it, like around his neck. And he would be looking like a total badass. Yes, a total badass. Anyways, that being said though, Deku would start to basically just get ready, and this is when the teams would be drawn. It would be none other than Deku and Melissa versus Bakugo and Ida. As soon as the match would be announced, Bakugo would look towards Deku's direction and point his thumbs down as he would say, "You're going down, Deku. This time, I'm ready for you." As Deku would look towards Bakugo and say, "Whatever." As Deku thinks in his head that he's been training as well. There's no way he's going to let Bakugo ever treat him in the way that he had done before. As immediately they would go into the building and Melissa would ask what that was all about. As Deku would explain to her that Bakugo used to bully him when they were younger. And now that Deku's stronger than him, he feels lesser. He feels as if Deku feels better than him. And Deku would look at her and say, "And I totally do. But don't tell him that." And Bakugo would just be ready over there with Ida, telling him to just stay in there and stay out of his way. As Deku and Melissa would be walking in, Deku would look at her as he would tell her that she should be more than enough to take out Ida, and to just kind of stall with him, seeing as Deku wants to kind of have some fun with Bakugo. Melissa would understand what the sentiment, and this is when Bakugo would come in through the corner, as Melissa would say that, "I guess I'll help you out a little bit here." And she would shoot a blast of energy right at Bakugo, and Bakugo would be sent crashing into the wall, as Deku would immediately smile towards her and say, "Go!" As they would both say, "Right!" and they would rush towards their respective opponents. Melissa would look for Ida, and Deku would immediately blitz over to Bakugo, as he would say, "Hiradora!" He would hit that attack right on Bakugo, and he would then proceed to basically kick Bakugo like pretty hard. As he would then, like, Bakugo would just blitz out of the way, Deku would proceed to go towards Bakugo and throw a punch, to which Bakugo would spin out of the way, and he would then throw an explosion at Deku's face, which Deku would put his arm in the way. He would grab Bakugo's leg and slam him into the side of the building. As Bakugo would cough out some spit, Deku would then grab him by the legs, and he would then slam him onto the ground, as Bakugo would go straight down one floor. As Deku would proceed to basically jump down there, he would proceed to say, "Leave Hurricane!" as Bakugo would just get knocked into the wall, and he would immediately get angry. As he'd be done for the count, acting unconscious, Deku would walk over to him with the capture tape, as Bakugo would immediately pull the pin and say goodnight, Deku. As he would pull that, and Deku would be flung into a wall. But right as he would get up, Deku would immediately have scars and cuts and burns all over him as he would say, Bakugo! He would immediately say, fourth gate, open! As immediately you can hear All Might saying, Deku, don't! And right at that moment, Deku would throw a punch at Bakugo right next to his head. As he would miss on purpose, Deku would blow 5 buildings behind Bakugo away, and he would then give Bakugo a death stare. He would tell him, if you ever do something like that again, next time, I won't miss. To which Bakugo would just be in terror, and he would just have sweat drops going down his face as Deku would walk away. And at this point, Melissa would have already beaten Ida and captured the bomb. After this, Deku would get treated by Recovery Girl, and he would be just fine, as after school, he would basically proceed to have a date with Melissa. And after the date, they would end up going to Melissa's house, as Melissa lives alone, and this day Deku had a lot of stress to let out. So they'd start hitting the books, looking at a little bit of biology, as Deku's working on a little bit of a math. He's working on multiplication, a little some, and yeah, I'm pretty sure you all know what I mean. Deku would after that proceed to go to the gravity chamber, and it's at this point that Deku would start slowly easing into 30 times gravity. He would do 21, then 22, then 23, and 24 is what all is the max he can handle. And after this, about a week would go by of Deku training in the gravity chamber without the USJ event happening just quite yet. Deku at this point would have actually been able to access the third 30 times Earth times gravity, and he would be able to access the 5th gate. Honestly, I forgot what the 5th gate was called, so I'm definitely gonna have to look it up real quick. Let's see. The 3rd gate of Naruto is called, the 5th, sorry, the Gate of Limit. It essentially lets him deliver a final blow, and it increases his strength. Okay, it helps him do the reverse lotus. After he activates it, he ends up fracturing a couple of his bones just because he went too far, and Deku would proceed to have to be healed by Recovery Girl, so he wasn't able to access that for 2 other days, but he recovered. And after that, we are now going to be getting into the USJ event, as they're all pretty much on the bus, and at this point they're all basically just vibing, as everybody is just basically on the bus, and people are talking about who the strongest is, which Suyu would say it would either have to be between Todoroki or Deku, seeing as Deku was able to swiftly take out the Bakugo kid, the little angry Pomeranian, and Bakugo would say, what did you say? And Suyu would just be like, see, he gets angry, as Bakugo would just scoff at that notion. He would proceed to just look away, and Deku would just start laughing in the corner, as Bakugo would not look at his direction. He would just be getting angrier and angrier, as he would eventually just later on, trust me, he's going to be put in his place, and he's finally going to realize that, yeah, he's not going to be Deku, so he might as well stop trying. But for the time being, however, he's doing the best that he can. And at this point, they're all essentially going over towards the direction that the USJ is at. As they would begin to walk towards it, Deku would get a weird feeling, but he just wouldn't be able to quite pick up on what it is he's feeling, as Deku would kind of just be not in the slightest worried about what's going to happen, seeing as he's not really thinking that anything's going to happen at all in all reality. So yeah, Deku would kind of just walk inside, and Hero 13 would give her speech, as everybody would just be listening in. Deku would kind of be zoning out, seeing as he doesn't even have a quirk, but he would get the gist of what she's trying to say. She's basically saying that quirks are useful, but don't overdo it. And Deku would, already knowing this, kind of just not really take in any of the information. After this, they would basically walk inside, and this is when Kurogiri's portal would open, to which immediately Deku would realize what's going on. He would say, Mr. Aizawa, are those real villains? Aizawa would nod his head and jump into action, as before anything can happen, Deku would say, "Leaf Hurricane!" as he would proceed to send Kurogiri flying away with a gust of wind. Deku would proceed to blitz down there, and he would start taking down villains before Kurogiri even had the chance to do a thing. As immediately, Bakugo and Todoroki would jump into action and they would start lunging towards Kurogiri's direction. Bakugo and what's his name, hardening boy, Kirishima would lunge in there, but they would miss, and this is when Todoroki would shoot his ice at Kurogiri, leaving him stuck for the time being. As it's at this point that Deku just starts bodying people left and right, and Aizawa would jump down there saying, "Hey kid, you're not supposed to be here, get upstairs now." And this is when Aizawa would basically almost get knocked out by one of the villains before Deku would jump on in there and actually have Aizawa's back. This is when Deku would proceed to look at Aizawa and say that he doesn't have to be here, but I'm pretty sure Aizawa needs him. As Aizawa would scoff at that notion, he would then say, "Kid, we'll talk about this later. Now let's go." As he would basically look towards Deku's direction, they would both get into a combat position and they would both be ready to start throwing them hands, as they would start taking down majority of the villains, and every single one of the students would mostly be safe. Everybody who basically wanted to fight would go down there and help out with taking down villains and villain control, but everybody who was scared of everything would have basically ran out the building with Ida rushing over to call All Might due to Hero 13's orders, and she actually wouldn't have ever even gotten hurt, so she would have actually been able to just stay by the students and protect them if need be. So yeah, she would basically be on patrol duty. She'd be more like a Sakura right now, since she would just be standing there with the kunai. Not really, since she doesn't have a kunai, but she would just be standing there with her glove open, and she'd just be ready just in case any villains would come. So yeah, that's essentially what's going on right now. It's at this point that Deku and Aizawa would have ended up taking out all of the villains, and at this point, Shigaraki would say, "Damn brat," as he would look towards the Nomu and say, "Nomu, kill that kid." As Deku would immediately just get a punch sent flying towards him by the Nomu, which Deku would barely be able to dodge. He would basically look towards the Nomu's direction, and right as the Nomu would send the punch straight at Deku's face, Deku would dodge it as if it would have went by him in slow motion. Deku would immediately start flipping backwards as he would say, "Let's go." As he would look towards the Nomu's direction, the Nomu would speed blitz him and punch him, sending him crashing down onto the ground, as Deku would look towards the Nomu and say that he's definitely going to have to go a little bit harder on this guy, as he would say that he would have thought that with all this gravity training he probably would have been able to defeat it, but it looks like he's most likely going to have to use the second gate to comfortably destroy the Nomu. Immediately, Deku would say, "Second gate, open!" As immediately he would proceed to basically look towards the Nomu and say, "You're done," as he would blitz it, and in 3 punches, which would have landed simultaneously without anybody seeing them, might I add, Deku would send the Nomu flying out of the building, and Kurogiri would have just barely been able to break out of his location. As it's at this point that Kurogiri would go in to grab Shigaraki, but before he could save him, Deku would blitz over to Kurogiri's direction, as he would immediately say, "Leaf Hurricane!" with even more power, sending Kurogiri flying away. And Bakugo would come in to grab him. As he would throw explosions on his metal piece, Deku would proceed to basically capture Shigaraki, and all of the villains that were present in this attack would actually proceed to get captured. This includes Shigaraki, by the way. And I know a lot of other people like to just basically let Shigaraki get away, but I mean, it doesn't really make sense. Deku in this version would have most definitely been able to capture this version of Shigaraki. So I'm not going to let him go just because the story needs Shigaraki because he's going to get powerful. Yeah, none of that. And this is essentially how this little portion of the story essentially ends. Okay, so before we actually start today's part, I am going to be giving off a little bit of a recap for what happened on our last part, seeing as, it's been like 2 days since the last part, and I'm pretty sure most people, kind of forgot a couple of things, not everything, since, it's not really that hard to keep up with this stuff. But, as you guys can remember, Deku and Melissa basically ended up getting together, and Deku ended up clapping him cheeks, and, he basically ended up getting a gravity room created for him, similar and doing something similar to Goku's training, but just on crack, because our man, this version of Deku is just goated. Like, just simply, this man of Deku is simply goated. And yeah, he ended up getting a gravity room, and basically well, they ended up taking the UA quirk assessments, and they basically ended up going through the USJ event where Deku ended up bodying most of the villains, and actually none of the villains ended up getting away in this version of events, which basically is just going to lead us into, well, you know, the week break, and that is where we're going to be starting. Okay, so after all of the events of the last part happen, we are basically just going to have Deku essentially just help out with the cleaning process and get questioned by some of the investigators who are doing, you know, taking care of that stuff. And after this point, Deku would basically go home, as he'd basically get some rest, and he'd be preparing himself for the 2-week break that they're actually going to be having. Seeing as in this version of events, they're actually going to give them 2 weeks to train before the UA school festival. So they're going to get a little bit of time extra. But the bad thing is that as soon as they come back, they're given notice that the very first day when they come back, they're only going to have that day, and right after that, they're going to have the UA festival. So that being said, we have a lot to cover. Alright, so in terms of how Deku is going to be training for the 2 weeks that he has off, Deku is going to be training with Melissa in terms of hand-to-hand combat and helping her increase her training routine. Deku would have seen that Melissa is more versatile in army-style combat, and she fights in a way like Sonya Blade. I don't know if many of you guys play Mortal Kombat, but she fights in a way similar to Sonya Blade from, you know, the video game. And her training routine is actually pretty tough too. You know, seeing as she's quirkless just like Deku definitely sees a lot of potential in her. And you know, if it wasn't for him training like crazy, you know, he and her probably would be at the same level. But due to Deku just being insane, he was able to get even further. Plus the gates, something that not many people can access. Yeah, the man's goated. So he basically ends up helping Melissa with hand-to-hand combat, and he starts helping her out with her training routine, telling her that she should double it. You know, it may feel as if her limbs are getting ready to pop off, but she has to go through that pain to get the best results. And so she does that for the first week, and on the second week, she actually ends up trying her luck with the gravity chamber, where she actually used the gravity well. And you know, seeing as she's pretty toned, by the end of the week she's basically able to use about 7 times Earth's normal gravity, instead of, you know, our boy Deku's, who was 10 times normal Earth's gravity by like the first day. And you know, she's not at that level quite yet, but you know, she's definitely powerful. So I believe 7 times normal gravity is an incredible feat for any normal human without like any of these key abilities, or you know, able to destroy the moon in half. So yeah, I think 7 times normal gravity is pretty, you know, pretty doable. And you know, at this point, Deku had basically just been training his body even more, trying to comfortably be able to access the 5th gate. See, before, he was barely able to access into the 5th gate with a lot of strain. But after the 2 weeks, Deku was able to actually access the 5th gate of, you know, the hidden, no, not the hidden gates, but, you know, the 8 inner gates that, you know, everybody has within them. Deku was able to access all the way to the 5th one comfortably. He can literally just tap into that thing as easy as it is for us to breathe. So yeah, Deku has a pretty perfect mastery over the 5th gate, and it even causes him 0 strain, seeing as people like Rock Lee and Might Guy, they were more focused on unlocking them rather than mastering them and basically being able to use them without, you know, backlashes. But our boy Deku's focusing on lessening the backlashes, and he can even access the 6th gate after the first week with minimal strain. So like, it hurts the boy. And it hurts almost as much as Rock Lee using the 4th gate in the fight against Gaara in, you know, normal Naruto, you know, the first part. And yeah, that's pretty much how everything's basically going from this point on. This is essentially how the 2-week training, you know, time that they get is basically used. And well, this is when we're just going to go ahead and skip on over to when they actually arrive back to class. Now, they would basically arrive back to class, and here is where they would have a pretty normal day. After they arrive back, people just feel a totally different aura coming off of Melissa. You know, she just feels more powerful and just more determined than ever. And Deku and Melissa look pretty relaxed, and you may be wondering why this is. Well, Deku was he was studying a little bit of hands-on biology. You know, he's more of a physical learner, I guess you could say. You know, he's more of a hands-on learner, I guess. And yeah. Anyways, that being said, though, Deku was basically told by Zawa and everybody else that they're going to be having the UA Spool Festival, and this is when all of the people from the original canon would basically be waiting by the door, to which Bakugo would essentially tell everybody that they're all just extras and to get out of his way, which they would. And this would lead to all the other classes basically just having a little bit of a anger towards Class 1A because they think that Class 1A thinks they're better than everybody, when in reality they are, but they don't think that, you know? So, that being said, Deku basically just tells everybody he's sorry on Bakugo's behalf, and he walks off with Melissa, to which everybody just feels the aura coming off of them, and they just feel a total sense of just power. They feel a sort of animalistic instinct coming off of Deku, and it's pretty threatening. It's inviting as well as, you know, it's kind of inviting where, you know, you can trust him, but like if you were to make this man mad, your whole career's over. Like, come on now. He was able to use second gate and obliterate the Nomu in 3 punches. That means second gate Deku is already as powerful as All Might in his prime. So, yeah, that shows you a lot of what Deku can do. Now, moving on, we're going to skip over to the very next day, the day of the first day of the UA School Festival, where they would basically all arrive, and Deku would actually be told that he's going to be having to give the speech. Deku would look towards midnight, and he would actually tell her that, you know, he wasn't aware, and she would basically just tell him to go out there and give it his best shot, you know. She's sure it won't be that bad. She forgot to tell him. Deku would low-key grit his teeth, and he would then walk up there as he would basically just say, everybody, give it your best, plus Ultra style. We all need to show the world that we're here and that we are going to be the next generation of great heroes. We need to show the world what this school is all about. Plus Ultra, as he would yell that, everybody in the crowd would basically just start screaming like Izuku, Izuku, you know, like going crazy. Now, Deku would of course basically just look at them, and you know, everybody would be pretty, you know, they'd all be pretty hyped for what's to come. As pretty much before anything could have started, All Might would have told Deku that he needs to show that he is here. If he's going to be talking all like that he needs to as well try his best. As Deku would understand the sentiment, and immediately before the race can even begin, like before the bullet that Midnight shoots, like the starter gun, before she can even shoot that, Deku would have literally blitzed over to the finish line by accessing his 5th gate. It would have seemed as if he merely just teleported there, and people in the crowd would begin to wonder what that kid's quirk is. It must be some sort of teleportation or super speed quirk because they didn't even see him move. Deku was so fast that Todoroki's eyes didn't do a thing to him. And in terms of Melissa, come on now, we gotta cover our girl Melissa. She would proceed to basically click a button on her chest, which would activate a suit that actually gives her the ability to, you know, increase her physical stats by 2 times, as well as giving her some rocket boots and propellers. She'd basically just run through the whole thing, and she would use grappling hooks and all the technology she has available to her to blitz over to the you know, the finish line, and she would come in 3rd place behind Bakugo and Todoroki. Now, after all that, Bakugo would look at Deku and just give him a little bit of a snarl, telling him that that was just a race, not to get too ahead of himself, that if they end up fighting during this time, he's over. It's done for. Bakugo's finally going to show him the difference between their strengths. You know, he trained even harder than he's ever trained in his life, and Deku's finally going to know what it's like to lose, to have his head hit the pavement. Deku would look at Bakugo and say, you can try it, and Bakugo would just scoff at that notion as he would proceed to basically walk away. This is when they would all go into the waiting room, as they would all basically just be told that they're going to be having oh my god, your boy looking tired. They're going to be having the Cavalry Battle. Now, in terms of the Cavalry Battle, Melissa has a lot of technology on her side, might I add, a lot of it. These are all her creations. So as soon as everything basically starts, Deku would immediately proceed to basically just pick his team. He would be handed the 10 million points, and in terms of his team, he would of course be picking Melissa, himself, Mei Hatsume, and Tokiyami, seeing as he and Uraraka aren't exactly the greatest of friends in this version, so I don't really see him and Uraraka basically getting on the same team. So Mei Hatsume gets in it, and Tokiyami does as well. And now, before the race can ever start, everybody would basically hold up Deku, and Deku is actually going to be the one with the headband. Deku would have asked Melissa to be up there, but she says that it's going to be a better choice for him to do that, seeing as he's the strongest and he'll be able to keep people away. As Deku would say that, you know, she's kind of right. They'd put on the little boots, and Melissa would actually use her gravity technology, something similar to the gravity chamber, to where anything 20 meters by them has 20 times normal gravity times force on top of them. So let's say Bakugo was to come shooting his explosions towards Deku's direction, immediately he would fall to the ground under the pressure of 20 times normal Earth's gravity. As soon as everything starts, Bakugo would tell his team that they're going straight after that loser. As before he can even do that, another team, another useless one, blitzes towards Deku, or just runs towards his direction, I guess you could say, and immediately that whole team just falls under the pressure. Another team sees that and laughs, as they would say that they're probably just weak, and they would fall under that pressure as well, saying that it feels as if gravity was multiplied 20 times. As Bakugo would finally get the picture, Deku would smile towards Bakugo's direction as Bakugo looks at him and says, "You got lucky." As he would proceed to basically run towards Todoroki, and Bakugo and Todoroki would be, having a little battle of their own, with Todoroki actually just kind of deciding that he doesn't have the time to deal with his stuff. He needs to go get other headbands, and Bakugo would have done the same. Bakugo would begin to basically rush and try to get other people's headbands, while Todoroki would try to go after Deku. He would shoot a giant amount of ice towards Deku, and Deku would jump up in the air as he would say, "Leave Hurricane!" blowing the ice away, with Todoroki realizing just how powerful this kid is. He would low-key get a little angry just due to the fact that he's supposed to be the greatest with nothing but half his power. And this is when Bakugo would rush at Todoroki as he steals his headband, and Todoroki and Bakugo would basically just get into a fight where they're rushing towards each other's headbands, meaning one of them is going to get kicked out. But by the end of everything, Todoroki was able to steal his headband back, and they were barely able to both teams get in. With Deku's team being in first place, this is going to lead us into the battles which are going to be had. As in terms of this, I'm gonna say that I'm just gonna blitz over and cover the Deku versus Shinso battle. Now this battle would definitely go a lot different than the one that we had in canon, just due to the fact that in this version Deku is definitely going to get caught off guard by Shinso's mind control ability. This version of Deku isn't friends with Ojiro, and I feel like even if Ojiro was to tell Deku that, Deku would still reply. Like, there's no way this version of Deku wouldn't reply if Shinso was to say something like, "That girlfriend of yours seems awfully weak," or he just begins to talk anything about Melissa. Deku would definitely answer. And so that's what Shinso does. He noticed that he was kind of close with her, and he uses that to his advantage. He would tell Deku that she seems like she's throwing herself at everybody. And Deku would immediately get angry after hearing Shinso say that. He would say, "How dare!" But before he can finish that sentence, Shinso would have already put him under his mind control, and Deku would immediately just realize that he had just messed up big time. As Deku would then be told by Shinso to walk off the stage, and this is when people would say, "What's that kid doing?" As some people on the stage would be like, "Wait, is that mind control?" And then President Mike would say, "Oh my god, incredible! Izuku Midoriya was put under mind control by Shinso." Last name insert here because I don't know his last name. And Deku would start walking off the stage as Deku would realize what's going on inside of his mindscape, but not really having the vestiges. He would, through sheer will alone, be able to break out of Shinso's mind washing ability, and he would immediately blitz towards him as he would kick him in the gut, sending Shinso flying onto the grass, and he would immediately just get knocked out as Deku would be breathing heavily, saying that that was a very close call. He cannot afford to lose, that he definitely has to be more careful later on. And this would lead into Deku going into the waiting room with Melissa, just basically both talking about their matches. Melissa would have won her first match, and Deku would basically just congratulate her as they're talking about, things or whatever. And this is when Todoroki would bust into the room, as Bakugo was actually on his way as well. We'd then see Todoroki declaring war on Deku. On the way out, he would then see Bakugo, and Bakugo would basically get nudged on the shoulder by Todoroki, as Bakugo would get angry, and Todoroki would say that you're not even worth acknowledging, with Bakugo saying that he can't wait to tear him limb from limb, half and half, as he would say, "Too bad I won't get to, because Deku's gonna do that pleasure for me." As Deku would look at Bakugo, Bakugo would tell Deku not to write him off just yet, and he would then walk away as he would grunt, and Deku would just be sitting there with Melissa, as she would tell him that Deku definitely has a little bit of a problem with that kid, doesn't he? Deku would say that she has no idea, and they would basically just start laughing, as Deku would say that, well, looks like he's gonna have to put that half and half kid in his place, as Melissa would say not to do him too dirty, as Deku would say, "Do you really mean that?" Melissa would say, "No, go tear that kid a new one." As Deku would smile, he would then look towards Melissa and say, "Sure thing," as he would proceed to essentially look right at right at Todoroki before the battle would start. And as soon as President Mike says, go, Deku would blitz towards Todoroki's direction as he would grab him by the shirt and he would just literally throw him outside of the arena. But Deku would have known that Todoroki would have used his ice, and Todoroki would use a giant pillar of ice to stop himself, which he would crash into. And right when Todoroki crashes into it, Deku would immediately activate the first gate as he would blitz towards Todoroki and kick him through the pillar of ice into the wall. As Todoroki would just get knocked out, his eyes would go white and he would just start being just laying there like literally lifeless, as Deku would then proceed to basically walk away from the stage, and people would say, no way, Izuku Midoriya just beat Endeavor's son, as people in the crowd would just start going wild, and Deku would just start smiling as he says that that was pretty easy. Bakugo would look at him and say that that was a pretty impressive thing he did, that even though that may have worked on Bakugo one time, but after seeing that, there's no way anything like that's gonna work. Deku would look at Bakugo and just tell him that, yeah, whatever, if he's gonna talk so big, he might as well actually be able to back it up this time. To which Bakugo would basically just look at him and not say a word, as this time he decides that he's just gonna let his fight show, Deku what kind of training he's been doing. Now it's at this point that Bakugo and Deku would be in the arena, and immediately Bakugo would tell Deku that he doesn't stand a single sliver of a chance against him. To which Deku would look at Bakugo and tell him that he's all talk and no bark, and that he's all bark and no bite. As Bakugo would look towards Deku and angrily just blitz him. And right before Bakugo even gets the chance to try to move, Deku would literally say, "Fifth gate, open!" as he would stomp on the arena, and immediately the arena would shatter. As Bakugo would get flung into the air by one of the arena, by the other half of the arena, he would get thrown into the air as Bakugo would basically shoot explosions to try to stabilize himself. Deku would go straight at Bakugo as he would say, "You want to see what I'm made out of? Fine." As he would immediately say, "But don't say I didn't warn you." As he would say that right behind Bakugo, and in an instant, Bakugo's life would literally flash before his eyes as Deku would start to literally ragdoll Bakugo around. He would literally be stepping on air as he just starts hitting Bakugo, ricocheting him back and forth in every direction that you guys can imagine. Bakugo would just start getting absolutely destroyed, and at the end of it, Deku would kick him up by his jaw as he would basically say, "Primary Lotus," as the bandages on his arm would basically start unraveling, and this is when Deku would capture Bakugo as he just starts spinning towards the ground. Bakugo would immediately get his head crushed into the ground, but the reason that he survives this is because our boy, who's the guy that has like the little wall power, the guy who can basically control mud or something like that, like Cementos would have softened the ground, so Bakugo didn't die from that attack. And afterwards, Deku would just be declared the winner, as Bakugo was already knocked out by the time that he ricocheted him 2 times. Deku would then look at Bakugo as he would spit on him, and he would then say, "That's where my respect for you's at, Bakugo." As after seeing that, everybody would basically just go silent, and they would just say that this kid is incredible. He's going to be the next All Might. People would completely disregard the fact that Deku just spit on another student, and they would just start cheering like crazy, as it's at this point that Deku would have won the entirety of the sports festival, seeing as Bakugo actually had to go against Melissa, and he would have ended up beating her by just barely. He used a couple cheap tactics and destroyed her. And yeah, that's basically what ends up happening. After this, he would get awarded his medal, with Bakugo getting 2nd, Todoroki 3rd. And, well, they would basically all just go back to class. Okay, your boy had to go get some water, so I stopped the recording. But I'm pretty sure most of you guys probably wouldn't have noticed. Anyways, so yeah, Deku would end up winning the sports festival, and this is when all of them would basically go back to class. As they're all back in class, Deku would basically just be told, as well as the rest of the class, that they're actually going to be having to pick their hero names today, which Midnight would walk in, and she would basically proceed to start telling everybody to start picking their names. Everybody in the class would start picking their usual canon names, and this is when everybody would proceed to essentially just pick their normal names. Everybody would pick, everything that they got in canon, and Deku would end up picking the name of Rock Lee. He's going to be the combat hero. No, the quirkless hero. Yes, he's going to be the quirkless hero, Rock Lee. And, I could have given him Mike Guy or something different, but I figured I'd stick with Rock Lee, seeing as, you know, he has the 8 gates and he low-key looks like Lee. You know, let me call him Rock Lee instead. So yeah, that's what your boy's gonna do. That being said, though, you know, we're just vibing, and this is when we're actually going to cut over to Deku basically being told that they're all, not just Deku, but all of them are actually going to having to pick their internship options, as they're all basically told that they're all going to have to go into intern with somebody. And well, to put it simply, they would all basically just be walked out of there, as they'd basically all choose their original counterpart choices. Deku in this version would still end up going with Gran Torino, just due to the fact that, you know, All Might did low-key teach him some things that he knows. And, you know, even though Deku is more powerful, Deku is always going to trust All Might's judgment. So if he tells him that he should go with Gran Torino because that will most likely give him the best approach, he's going to go with Gran Torino. So Deku would, of course, say his goodbyes to Melissa, and he would get one last little, you know, study session with her, just because, you know, why not? He would proceed to basically just, you know, he'd have a pretty good time, and, you know, he'd relieve some pent-up stress. Bakugo, after the fact that Deku destroyed him the way that he did, and he was able to see what happened in the sports festival live on television, Bakugo, his whole facade of thinking that he's the strongest, just, it completely changed. Bakugo quite literally had a total sex change just in the middle of that battle when Deku was just whooping the man. So Bakugo's whole, you know, Chihuahua attitude, where he likes to talk a lot but can't even back it up, yeah, that goes away. Bakugo just kind of stays quiet, and he doesn't be talking or be loud and obnoxious like our normal counterpart Bakugo. Of course, I know Bakugo changes later on, but, you know, that is later on, and that's due to different circumstances that won't be happening here. So, you know, there has to be some way for Bakugo to calm down, and, you know, he needs to be put down a couple notches. So yeah, that would essentially happen to Bakugo. And in terms of what happens with Todoroki never ends up being told by Deku to use his fire side because it's his, and instead he still ends up having that thing where he doesn't like using it. Now, in terms of Melissa, she actually would have ended up going with Aizawa for the internship, seeing as she actually wants to learn how to maybe use that scarf of his, but just due to the fact that that scarf actually takes like years to master, she ends up learning just a little bit during her time, as, you know, with Aizawa's agency. And Deku with Gran Torino would basically spend most of his time getting his head knocked in. Honestly, Deku would get blitzed over and over again by Gran Torino, who would have actually told him that he's not allowed to use any of the gates. And then instead of training nothing but his body this time we're going to be training his reaction speed, as well as, you know, his ability to take a hit, because, you know, Deku is strong, but, you know, he's pretty sure he doesn't know how to take a hit, just due to the fact that Deku doesn't really take him many of those nowadays. You know, before, he was really used to taking hits. You know, he was the master of taking hits, thanks to Bakugo. You know, Bakugo was doing his training. You know, Bakugo was low-key training Deku back in the day when he was hitting him a lot. You know, if you really think about it, Bakugo wasn't really the bad guy. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously though, Deku needs to, you know, get his reaction speed up, as well as, you know, his tolerance to pain. So that's essentially what Deku does during that time. And Deku, he's not very happy with you know, getting beat up by some old man every 10 seconds. So eventually he learns the hang of it. And this is where it's all basically going to lead us to the day where they arrive at Hosu City, and the Nomu basically attacks the side of the train, where they all are basically told that basically they have to sorry guys, you know, I know I'm stopping a lot during this recording, but your boy's very tired, low key. You know, your boy don't even want to be recording right now. I'm so tired, I need some sleep. But you know, I love y'all, and I'm not about to fail on what I said. It's triple upload today or nothing. So yeah, Deku would proceed to basically clown the Nomu. He would destroy that Nomu. Speaking of clowns, I dropped a story time today, you know, the same day that you guys are watching this, and it's about my killer clown experience back in 2016-17. So if you guys want to find out what happens in that, I suggest you guys go check out that video, you know, later after you guys finish this, seeing as, you know, y'all gotta finish listening to the rest of this story before you go. So anyways, that being said, Deku would basically clap the Nomu, and he would actually end up saving Ida in this version, because Ida still would have been dumb and still tried to go take out Stain all by himself, even though he can't even take out like normal hero students who are pretty weak. Like, come on now, you're not about to take out the hero killer if you can barely take out like your classmates. Like, come on now, it's just not gonna happen. So yeah, Ida with his baby mufflers just completely almost got put on a t-shirt. But if it wasn't for Deku, he probably would have put on that t-shirt. But anyways, Deku proceeds to save Ida. And well, from here, the events just kind of just play out with Deku just taking out the rest of the Nomus that are attacking Hosu City. Oh wait, actually no, should there still be Nomus? You know what? I'm just gonna say that All for One ends up making a deal with Stain, and he ends up giving Stain a couple of Nomus to cause some havoc in the city for Stain to basically catch some heroes. As that's the reason. Just because if it's not for that, Ida is going to get put on a t-shirt again. And I do my guy Ida way too wrong sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. Some of you guys always be commenting like, "Yo, Xehther, dude, stop killing Ida, bro. What has he ever done to you?" Now to that, I say nothing. I just don't like smart people, like people who are smart asses like him. So yeah, that's what he did to me. Yep, that's what he did to me. Okay, so we're going to be picking off this story right after Deku finished saving Hosu City. See, it's at this point that Deku was called on over to the police station, and on his way there, a bunch of civilians from Hosu City would basically just be thanking Deku. They'd be like, "You're the man! What's his pro hero name?" And people would just start talking in the crowd, basically just being like, "That's Rock Lee, the new pro hero!" Or no, the new, the future #1, as people just start cheering his name, and Deku just smiles at them as they're like, "What's your quirk?" Deku just looks back at them and yells, "I'm quirkless," as they all just basically start cheering even louder, and they're like, "The first quirkless hero!" They just start going berserk as Deku's just smiling, thinking that, all his hard work truly is paying off. It's been years, and all those push-ups, the runs, the pain, the times that he's broken his bones, the times that he just passed out due to exerting his body far too much, it's all finally working out. Like, it's finally starting to show some fruits for all of his labor. Deku just smiles as he goes to the police agency, and this is when he would proceed to basically just enter inside, as he would see the dog guy, and he would basically look at Deku as he would tell him that everything that he did was in violation for UA and anything that happened, and that people literally have videos for what happened today. So even though he doesn't want to give Deku any punishments for this, he is going to have to face a little bit of consequences for this. And Deku would then look at him as he would say, "How dare you? So I was just supposed to let these people die? There was no way any of your unqualified heroes could have done a thing about it. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I could take each and every single one of them and your entire police force down at the same time. So punish me. Do it." As the police guy would say, "But due to the fact that you are a student and you saved the city, I thank you." As Deku would look at him and he would calm down, as he would then smile and say, "Sorry about that." The dog guy would basically look at him and be like, "No, it's no problem at all. I would have reacted the same if I saved the whole city and I was thanked by getting punished." Deku would look at him and he would smile, as the dog guy would basically tell him, "However, your little master over there," as Gran Torino would just be sitting there kind of, face palming as well as being proud, would be told that he's going to have his hero license revoked for a couple of months. And Deku would be told that he has to go back to UA, as Deku would of course do that, and he would then basically just get a bunch of messages from from our girl Melissa. Now she would text Deku and just be like, "What are you thinking? What were you thinking going there and doing the things that you were doing?" As Deku basically told her that he saved Hosu City, she would say, "Yeah, but what if something could have gone wrong? What if the hero killer got you?" Deku would then send her a little bit of a smirky face and say, "The hero killer? Yeah, I took care of him." As Melissa would just send 3 dots back. And she would then just start laughing. She would basically say that she can't believe she ever doubted him. Deku would say if it's fine to go train over there for the 3 remaining days. And she would say of course it is. As Deku would train like never before. And it's at this point that Deku would gain a full mastery over the 6 inner gates. Full mastery over the 6 gates. As Deku would basically look towards Melissa, he would basically smile as, Melissa would look at Deku and just give him a smile back. And, this is when, in text, by the way, in text, not in real life because they haven't seen each other yet. And Deku would just basically train for 3 days, mastering the 6 inner gates. As not the not like all eight, but like, you know, 6 of them. As they would basically report back to class, and this is when Deku would see Melissa. As Melissa would run up to Deku, as Deku was walking, holding his books and stuff, she would jump on him, causing Deku to drop everything, and she would just begin to bombard the man with kisses. As Deku would basically pick her up, and he'd basically give her a piggyback ride all the way to class. This is when Deku would look at her and smile, as he would say that, you know, how would her training go? And she would basically look towards Mr. Aizawa, who was at the door, and she would smile as Mr. Aizawa would give her a head nod, and Deku would say, so I'm guessing it went well. Melissa would say that it did, that she actually learned a lot about how to use that scarf. And Deku would say, wait, Mr. Aizawa taught you that? She would say, of course he did. And Deku would say that he's definitely going to have to learn how to use that scarf as well. As Melissa would say, I mean, you can try it, but I'm pretty sure you don't got the skills. As Deku would say, is that a challenge? And they would both laugh, as they would both basically just go through the normal school day up until the final period, where they would basically be told that they're going to have a little bit of a race to see all the progress that the students have gotten. But before the race can happen, though, Deku would actually get called over to Principal Nezu's office, and everybody else would do that part. Principal Nezu would basically look at Deku, as he would basically proceed to tell him that essentially, you know, Deku is far above anybody's league in this hero school. He might even be more powerful than the big 3 themselves. Deku would ask who they are, and Nezu would basically just tell him that, you know, due to that fact, Deku's progress is going to be, you know, pushed up by quite a bit. As Deku would say, what do you mean by that? And Nezu would look at Deku, as he would say that he's going to be having to make him a provisional. He's going to be taking his provisional hero license today, seeing as in case anything else ever happens, Deku can step in legally. And Deku would just look at him with his eyes just glowing wide, as he would look at Nezu and just thank him, as he would go and take that provisional hero license. And our boy Deku would ace it, to say the least. He would get perfect score. He's a literal exemplary of a hero. Like he is literally what you want to be if you're going to be a hero as well. And Nezu, well, Nezu can definitely see that, as well as everybody else. So yeah, that's essentially what happens with Deku while everybody else has the race. And Ida, this time, actually ends up surviving, which is, you know, the only good thing that happens from all this stuff. Now, that being said, Deku, after this, would basically proceed to just kind of chill with Melissa, as he just has a really nice, cool day with her after school, right? He's just vibing. He and Melissa decide to have a little bit of a movie night and just put training and all that behind them. However, Deku just couldn't do it. Before he went on the date with Melissa, he would have definitely gotten a couple of push-ups, sit-ups, and he went on a run on his way there. But he quickly, you know, he took off the sweat and he arrived. He put on, you know, he showered real quick and, you know, he went to Melissa's house. She was not the wiser. So with that being said, Deku and Melissa would have a little bit of a study session and, you know, a little bit of movie session. They would make their own movie, by the way, you know, wink, 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 as, you know, that's pretty much what happens with them. And about 2 days later, they would be told about the final exams and the forest training camp that they're all going to have to go to. And, you know, they're going to have their papers signed by their parents. Deku would go over to Inko and he would ask her, and Inko would basically just smile as tears are running from her eyes, and she tells Izuku that she can't believe he's gotten so strong. Her baby is so powerful without even a quirk. Deku would look at her and basically just say, Mom, not right now. As she would say, what? I'm pretty sure Melissa feels the same. I mean, isn't she quirkless too? You're basically doing something for the both of you. You're proving that even quirkless people can be powerful too. Deku would look at, you know, Melissa, and she would smile and nod her head, saying that her mom has a point. As Deku would look at his mom, he would then smile as he would tell her that, you know, thanks. And he would then get the paper signed as well. Everybody would basically just be told that they're going to have their final exams and that they have 1 week exactly to train. During this time, Deku would decide that he's going to try to unlock the 7th gate, even if a little bit during this week. And he's going to go crazy with the training. As Melissa would tell him not to overdo it, Deku would say that he would try not to. But of course, on the 3rd day of training to try to unlock the 7th gate, Deku had to be hospitalized for the entire night because, you know, the man was passed out due to exhaustion. Recovered girl went to go see him, but she noticed immediately that he was just exhausted and that all Deku needed was some rest. So for that day and the very next day, Deku would rest, and the very next couple days, Deku would continue his hardcore training. He would even do a little bit of a clapping training with Melissa, if you all know what I'm talking about. You know, some of the good old-fashioned studying. As of course, sorry if I destroyed and offended your ears right there, but I got my point across. That being said, though, essentially the day would come along where they would have to actually take the final exam. And in terms of Deku and Melissa, yeah, they aced the whole thing. Deku was still put on the team with Bakugo, and when Bakugo tried to retaliate to Deku, and wait, no, he doesn't. If you guys can remember the last part, I basically said that Bakugo, low-key, he switched genders. Like, he switched genders real quick. And after Deku just whooped the man last time, Bakugo was not going to give him no type of attitude. So when Bakugo was basically told by Deku that their plan is just going to be to try to take down All Might one-on-one, that Bakugo was going to act as more of a distraction, Bakugo immediately just kind of cucked down to Deku and said, alright, sure, we'll do that. As Deku and Bakugo basically took down All Might. Deku would have activated the 4th gate just to make sure that he can take All Might quickly and swiftly, as Bakugo in an instant would have flashed in front of All Might, shot him with a smoke screen right in his face. Deku blitzed behind All Might and just literally knocked him out with a hit to the back of the head. All Might was dropped to the ground before he even had the chance to realize what happened. And yeah, All Might was just GG comboed by our man's Deku. As afterwards, everybody who passed would pass. Whoever was on Melissa's team basically ended up passing as well. And this is going to lead us into all of the students basically being on the bus and just kind of messing around with each other. Deku and Melissa were in the back, just kind of enjoying each other's companies, if you know what I mean. They were in the back of the classroom, just, doing a little bit of smoochy smooch, with everybody kind of just being like, get a room, and just some funny scenes happening, honestly, all around. That's at this point that they all basically were taken to the forest training camp, and this is when they were stopped. They would basically stop at the mountain range, where they would basically be told that, well, they're going to have to pretty much get from point A to point B, as immediately they were all thrown, and Deku would instantaneously activate the 5th gate, as he would proceed to grab Melissa and just blitz out of there. As everybody was wondering where they were, and by the time that they all went back to the base camp, Deku had done a little bit of image training, if you can pick up what I mean by that. Deku would have helped Melissa with some spiritual training, if you get what I'm saying, and yeah, Deku would have definitely, he would have stuffed his rod inside of Melissa's, her area. And yeah, after that, basically everybody got there, with Aizawa and the rest of them having gotten there about an hour early. And Deku saying that they cleared that whole thing and that they were basically just chilling here this whole time. Aizawa would say that this kid just never ceases to impress him, and he would look towards Melissa, telling her that they're going to be training. So as soon as the rest of the class arrives, they would look at Deku and Melissa and just say, you guys left us. You have no idea how hard that was. Deku would look at them as they would say, didn't you guys tell us to get a room? And he would basically smirk, as some of the people in the class would just kind of stay quiet, and Ida would basically say, that is no way to treat your classmates. As Deku would look at Ida and say, I saved your life, dude. The least you can do is stay quiet this once. Ida would just stay quiet immediately, and this is when Deku would just start laughing, as everybody in the classroom would just look at him and be like, you're so lucky, so strong, for no reason. As Deku would say that, you're lucky. I was born without a quirk. And this is when some of the people in class would just say, are you even sure you're quirkless? I mean, I don't know any quirkless kid ever who's been able to be this strong. You're quirkless. You shouldn't even be half as strong as you are. And Deku would look at them and say it was all hard work. He earned his strength. Not like them, who I bet they just relied on their quirks and never trained it a day of their lives, just letting it evolve on their own as they grew. And most of them, they did exactly just that, except for Bakugo. I'm pretty sure Bakugo is like one of the only people who actually trained his quirk, if even at all. And it's at this point that they all kind of just decided, yeah, we're not going to say nothing. And Deku and everybody else would basically just go through that day doing a little bit of training. Oh no, they can't train. They're all exhausted. Deku would do a little bit of training, and they would all get some food cooked by Mandalay herself, which would lead them all into going to the hot springs and just having a normal, relaxing day. Being told by Aizawa that they better enjoy today, because this is nothing compared to the training that they're going to be doing later on. And Deku would look at them all as he would say that this is actually nothing compared to the training that he's going to put them all through. Aizawa would look at Deku and he would tell them that, I mean, he's quirkless and he was able to get that strong. So if he has a 1 week to train them all and get them used to liking working out and stuff like that, they may just turn out to be better heroes than they would have ever been without him. Aizawa would look at Deku and just kind of nod his head, as it's at this point that everything would basically just go as it did in canon. Deku would still end up catching Koda just due to the fact that Mineta is still a pervert, and this would lead into Deku learning about Koda and low-key feeling bad about him. And also in this version, Koda never ended up hitting Deku's family jewels, so Deku actually feels a lot more compelled to help Koda out with, you know, his situation. And yeah, that would just lead to an overall better situation than what we had gotten in canon. This is, you know, this is pretty nice. And afterwards, they would have about 3 days. I'm going to say 3 days for Deku to essentially help train the students. And the students are dying. Like, they are dropping like flies. They are dropping like flies. They are having an incredibly hard time trying to handle this training regimen. And he and Melissa were basically the ones doing the best, with Bakugo coming in third and Todoroki trying to keep it, like, trying to not show that he is suffering because of this, but you know, he just cannot do it. Like, come on now, if you have to train like Rock Lee for even 1 day, your limbs are gonna start feeling as if, you know, they fell off, and you're gonna wish that they did as well. I mean, Rock Lee's training is just in another world, honestly. And it's at this point that he's like 15, so he's not putting them, you know, to do like the weak version of Rock Lee's training. He's making them really train. So yeah, that being said, Deku's basically just, you know, enjoying everything. And it's at this point where, you know, the nighttime would approach for the day of the villain attack, where everything would start to change. Deku would follow Koda, and Melissa would stay back, as well as, you know, everybody else in the classroom. And they would all basically just be enjoying their bowls of curry, as Muscular would approach Koda, and, you know, we would have a battle between Gates Deku versus Muscular. As Muscular would throw a punch right at Koda, Deku would immediately grab Koda and roll out of there. As he would put Koda to his side, he would then look towards Muscular. He would say, "What are you doing here, and what do you want?" As Koda would take off the coat, and this one we would have Koda being terrified, as he would say, It's him! You're the guy who..." As Deku would immediately realize who this guy is, Deku would immediately just get enraged, and his fury would just lead him to activate the 4th gate. As Deku would say, "So you're the guy. You're the guy who made Koda the way he is. I'm gonna make you pay." Muscular would look... Okay, I choked on water. Okay, that was you know, just forget that happened. Anyways, Muscular would look at Deku as he would laugh in his face and say, "Do you know where Akatsuki Bakugo is?" Deku would say, "So you're looking for Kachan, huh?" As he would then look towards Muscular, he would then say, "Well, too bad, you're not going to be looking for him." As immediately he would punch him into the mountain and just completely knock out Muscular. As it's at this point that Deku pretty much just did what 1,000,000% Deku did to Muscular. And Deku would then grab Koda as he would take him to Mr. Aizawa and say that he has no time to explain that there's villains running around and that he has to go help Bakugo. As Deku would blitz towards the forest, he would then see Tokiyami and, you know, our boy Dupli Arms, as, you know, Tokiyami and Dupli Arms would just have their normal experiences going on, as everything would basically go as, well, you would really expect. Deku would lead Tokiyami over to Bakugo and Todoroki would, you know, have Tokiyami calm down after Moonfish was defeated, and they would basically travel in a pack, with Bakugo still actually being taken, and everybody who was basically present in the normal event and timeline would basically be there. As everything would basically go as it did in canon, up to the point where Deku finds out that Bakugo was taken. It's at this point that Deku would blitz over to Bakugo, using the 2nd gate to catch up with Mr. Compress, and he would, as Mr. Compress would throw the orb towards Dabi would be walking through the portal, as Deku would immediately say, "4th gate, open!" He would blitz straight through the portal, and this is when he would be met by none other than All For One. As Deku would look at the direction, his surroundings, he would see that he's surrounded by Toga, Dabi, Mr. Compress, Kurogiri, and All For One. As immediately All For One would go to flick his fingers and teleport people away from the area, But Deku, like, instantaneously would literally blitz over to each and every single one of the members, and he would just knock them all out as he proceeds to look towards All For One, who basically is just stunned. I mean, he's heard the things that people have been saying about Deku, but it was impossible, right? Right? Deku would then look towards All For One as he would say, "So you're the little All For One. You're the famed All For One, the one who destroyed all my respiratory system." All For One would begin to laugh, and he would say, "And you're the famed Izuku Midoriya, who took out my successor." As All For One's rage would begin to well up, and he would then shoot black tendrils at Deku. To which Deku would, in an instant, literally looking as if he's tapped into Ultra Instinct, would just dodge each and every single one of the tendrils, going straight at All For One, as immediately he would say, "Dragon Fist! Roar!" No, wait, no, not roar. He would say, "Dragon Fist Punch!" as he would just shove his arm straight in All For One, and he would obliterate each and every single atom in All For One, as All For One would be no more, and Deku would then basically just stand there as Bakugo saw everything that just went down. He would basically look up at Deku as Deku would extend his arm out to Bakugo, and he would tell him if he's okay. As Bakugo would look at Deku, just look down at the floor and ask him, "Why, Deku? Why did you save me?" Deku would look at Bakugo and say, "You know, Bakugo, we may have our differences, but that doesn't mean I don't care about you." As Bakugo would say, "But you spat on me. You said that your respect was up to there." Deku would say that his respect was there, but that doesn't mean he doesn't care about Bakugo at all. As Bakugo would look at Deku, he would then basically grab onto Deku's hand, and Deku would just say, "Come on, Bakugo. What do you say we just let the past go? I mean, we both haven't been the greatest to each other, but, I mean, we can start over." As Bakugo would look at Deku and he would say, "Don't ever dream of that, Deku." He'd say, "Just stay out of my way and I'll stay out of yours." As he would then look towards Deku and say, "You didn't save me, by the way. I could have done the same thing." Deku would then laugh, and he would then take Bakugo back to the area, as they would all be present back in UA, and it would just be all over the news that Deku basically took out All For One. And it's at this point that Principal Nezu just honestly had no choice. The public was wanting Deku to become a pro hero immediately, and this would lead into Deku establishing his own hero agency as the youngest hero to ever live, and he would actually be under the tutelage of Hawks. But with that being said though, guys, that is where we will be concluding what if Deku could access or had the 8 inner gates. Now, today's video was definitely a blast from the past, and if you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, then please make sure to go down below, smash that like button so it does better in the algorithm, and please subscribe if you haven't done so already. It's a click of a button, and if you don't do so, then I'm sorry, but I will have to punch you in the face. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules, I just follow them. I'm totally kidding. But seriously though, guys, I love each and every single one of you guys, even the ones who aren't subscribed. And it has been your boy Xehther, but I am out. Peace.